Chapter 344. Before the start, everyone was given a herbal book which recorded some of the more difficult-to-find herbs in Baiji Mountain. They had to search according to the herbs in the book. Moreover, they had to be fresh. Whether they were recently picked or not, they could tell at a glance. The two of you listen up. Ling Yan came forward with 2 books in his hand and handed them to Li Zongjio and Kuan Erisher. Although there are only 2 people in our class, I don't want our class to be ranked lower than the others. You know what I mean. The threat in his eyes was self-evident. There were a total of 16 classes. The class with the least number of people was the first year of Tiangong Department's Class A. Only Li Zongjio and Kuan Erisher were in the class. However, in the other classes, there were more or less 30 people in each class. Some of them had even more. The second class with the least number of people was the second year of Tiangong Department's Class A. But there were 4 of them, and they were all seniors. With such a terrifying difference in numbers, how were they going to fight for victory? This was simply an impossible task. Kuan Erisher was preparing to analyze the impossible situation for Ling Yan. This allowed Ling Yan to understand the situation clearly. Otherwise, he would really think that the 2 of them were immortals. However, Ling Yan's gaze was fixed on Kuan Erisher. Within his gentle gaze, there was also a hint of death. If Kuan Erisher really said those words, he would probably be kicked again. "I'll do my best, I'll do my best," Kuan Erisher immediately said with a smile. There was a trace of stubbornness and determination on his face. He had to persevere. "If the 2 of you can get first place, I can guarantee that I'll give you a chance to enter the forbidden area before the end of the first half of the semester. You don't need to rely on your ranking on the Pill Alchemist ranking." Ling Yan took a step forward and said in a low voice. Originally, Li Zongjio didn't care at all. He didn't come here to look for medicinal ingredients, but to borrow the fire attribute essence energy here to break through his ancient golden tyrannical body art. But when he heard Ling Yan's words, even Li Zongjio's eyelids twitched. "Hit the snake where it hurts." Ling Yan's words hit Li Zongjio right where it hurt. This was exactly what Li Zongjio had been dreaming of. "Really?" Li Zongjio asked for the first time. The longing in his eyes was not an act. Ling Yan also laughed heartily in his heart. He was secretly pleased with himself. "Looks like it's not that unmanageable. I thought that you were really stubborn. From the looks of it now, it was only SOS. Of course, I'm your form teacher. How could I lie to you?" Ling Yan said proudly. Since he said it out loud, he naturally had the confidence to do it. Otherwise, wouldn't he be throwing his face? Kuan Erashi's breathing became hurried. He thought that it would take at least a year to enter the alchemist ranking. After all, there were so many geniuses, and some of them were even more talented than Kuan Erisher. In addition, the alchemist ranking was basically filled with the 4th years. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to break through. Therefore, the fastest way to enter the forbidden area of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor would take at least a year or even 2. If Ling Yan really had a way, it could only mean that Ling Yan was really powerful. Everyone wanted to enter the forbidden area to comprehend it properly. Anyone who entered the forbidden area would gain something. Unless you were a complete idiot that couldn't be saved. But such a person wouldn't have the chance to enter the forbidden area. "All right, it's decided then," Li Zongjio said. "Good luck, hee. Ling Yan patted the shoulders of the 2 and revealed a scheming smile. How could it be so easy to get first place? Moreover, the opportunity to enter the forbidden area was only an opportunity. It wasn't a guarantee that one would be able to enter. As long as one was an outstanding student, they would have this opportunity. There were 2 outstanding students in each class, and there were only 2 people in their class. No matter what, it would be the 2 of them. In fact, these things were clearly written in the manual of the academy. However, some people were arrogant and didn't look at it. Therefore, they often missed out on some benefits of the academy. The group in front had already set off. Some people wanted to cultivate alone, while others wanted to get a good result. One could see it in the crowd. The new students were all walking at the back. Mo Su Li and the others were more eye-catching, and they were surrounded by a large group of people. It was as if they were waiting for instructions. Mu Qingyun also loyally guarded Mo Su Li's side. They were all from the A class of the Earth branch. Clearly, their teachers had told them that if they could get a good result this time, they would have the chance to enter the forbidden area. Or some other kind of resources and inducements. Li Zongjio had seen the teacher in charge of the A class of the Earth branch before. It was Yang Xuelin. Let's split up here. Pay attention to your safety. Those people definitely won't give up so easily. Kuan Erishur said to Li Zongjio. He was also worried that Li Zongjio would be killed in a while. If that happened, it would be too tragic. Although they were all from the same academy, it was hard to say what would happen. Yes, you should be careful too. Li Zongjio said. They didn't plan to move together. The two of them had their own secrets. Kuan Erishur also didn't want his secret to be known by others. It was fine to play together, but it wasn't so good to cultivate together. The two of them chose to split up. Li Zongjio didn't even think as he rushed towards the mountain peak. His figure was like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. In the blink of an eye, he was already hundreds of meters away. Follow that brat. Don't let him run away. Murong Jian immediately said. At this moment, they were already prepared for this. They were now at the foot of the Baiji mountain. Just the surrounding temperature was enough to make it difficult for people of the Yuan Master realm to move. Fortunately, these people were able to reach the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Most of them were at the Yuan General realm. Those who were more talented and walked at the forefront of the cultivation world were those who could reach the Yuan Ancestor realm. Although the strength of these freshmen hadn't been revealed yet, Mo Suli and Mu Qingyun were most likely experts of the Yuan Ancestor realm. As freshmen, their strength was catching up to the seniors. In addition, there were two even more monstrous geniuses, Li Zongjio and Kuan Erishur. This outdoor training would definitely be very exciting. That guy who stole my cauldron, I've finally found you. Just as Xueyue was walking, she suddenly saw Li Zongjio flash past her and rush towards the mountain peak. What a guy! This caused Xueyue to become excited. She had long wanted to find this guy and take revenge. No matter what, this Li Zongjio had embarrassed her, so she had to make this Li Zongjio lose face. At this moment, Xueyue gave up on looking for herbs and directly chased after Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio's speed was very fast, and the surrounding temperature had also risen to a terrifying level. The ground in this area seemed to be close to flat ground, which meant that the altitude was getting higher and higher. At this moment, Li Zongjio was at an extremely high place. There's a good hiding place up ahead. Li Zongjio searched the area and found a stone array. The stone array was able to gather the surrounding temperature. This place is filled with fire elemental energy. Even a Sky Origin Ancestor level expert would find it difficult to last for an incense stick's worth of time here. Li Zongjio felt that the temperature of his skin was rapidly rising. Even so, Li Zongjio still did not use his own elemental energy, but used his physical strength to resist the surrounding temperature. Within the stone array, a natural defensive shield was formed. Li Zongjio sat down cross-legged. He quickly activated the body elemental technique and sucked in the surrounding fire elemental energy. When the fire elemental energy entered his skin, he immediately felt a piercing pain. This piercing pain made Li Zongjio grimace. In the past, it felt like knives were scraping his body. But now, it felt more like red-hot iron rods rolling back and forth on his body. Chapter 345. Xueyue chased for a long time, but Li Zongjio's figure had long disappeared. She was surrounded by barren mountain roads and the high temperature was spreading all over her body. However, Xueyue's body seemed to be surrounded by a cold aura that helped her resist the high temperature. Damn it, is that guy a rabbit? He disappeared all of a sudden. Xueyue was also stomping her feet in anger. Just as she was getting angry, she suddenly saw a mushroom-like thing slowly emerging from under a rock not far away. Hey, I'm so lucky. Isn't this the iron rock mushroom? Xueyue excitedly picked up the small iron shovel in her hand and ran to the bottom of the rock to dig. The iron rock mushroom was a kind of medicinal herb that was difficult to find. It was also one of the top 20 rare medicinal herbs in the herbal medicine booklet. This herbal booklet was actually a ranking of the rare herbs in Mount Baiji. Those herbs that could be listed in this booklet basically had some background. Currently, some of them had been discovered by others, and some of them could only be seen from afar and could not be approached. They were also listed on the booklet. It was very difficult to find the top 10, so it was a very good harvest to be able to find the top 20 iron rock mushrooms. It was currently ranked first and was the most precious medicinal herb that had been discovered. It was called the scarlet white lotus. The place where this kind of refinement took place would be a sea of blood, and at the same time, a hell of heavenly fire. Even if one got close to the scarlet white lotus, one would fall into the terrifying hell of the scarlet white lotus. In the end, many people would be obliterated by the scarlet white lotus. This was not only a spiritual medicine, but also a spiritual medicine that could kill people like scything flax. Even if you saw this spiritual medicine, if you did not have enough strength to pick it, then it was best not to go near it. After all, this was not a joke with one's life. Many people were self-confident, and when they found the scarlet white lotus, they would often be carried away by it. Therefore, they would rush blindly and lose their lives. Li Zongjio cultivated in the same place for nearly 6 hours. It was now noon. The temperature was also higher. His skin was instantly scorching hot, as if he was a cooked lobster. No, I'm still a little short. Li Zongjio's skin had already begun to crack and peel. Under such high temperatures, there was no way to directly recover. Therefore, he had always maintained this state. Keep going up. They were less than 500 meters away from the top of the mountain. If one climbed over the top of the mountain and reached the core of White Blaze Mountain, the temperature would reach a terrifying level. Even Yuan monarchs would not want to stay in such an environment for long. 10,000 meters above the incandescent mountain pass, there was no rain at all. Once any water got close to this place, it would be directly burned away. It evaporated without a trace. Li Zongjio stood up and continued to walk towards the top of the mountain. This time, he advanced another 100 meters. Compared to the previous temperature, after advancing another 100 meters, the temperature was almost twice the original temperature. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Li Zongjio felt that his internal organs were burning fiercely, as if they were about to melt. As for his clothes, they had long been burned away. Li Zongjio used his yuan power to cover the important parts. Otherwise, he would become an exhibitionist. Let's continue. Li Zongjio's entire body was charred black, and no part of his body was intact. With every step he took, his entire body felt like it was being torn apart. This kind of pain also made Li Zongjio feel a strong desire to break through during this process. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. The ancient golden body of the tyrant dragon was constantly converting the damage it received into power. However, this power had been lingering in his body all this time. Even when he recovered his strength, it wasn't enough for him to consume. He could not make ends meet. Therefore, Li Zongjio's entire body was still being burned by the fire attribute yuan power. The obsidian flames seemed to have sensed the scorching heat of the surrounding environment and actually joined in the absorption of the fire-attributed yuan energy. Li Zongjio's body, which was the carrier, also suffered extremely terrifying damage. Plop! Just as he was about to reach the top of the mountain, Li Zongjio could not hold it in and fainted. Without using the slightest bit of elemental energy and just relying on the strength of his body, he was definitely a man to be able to walk to this place. How many people would not be able to reach this place? Even if a Sky Origin Ancestor-level expert used his yuan power to maintain his condition, he would not be able to last more than a few hours in such a hot environment. However, fainting in such a place was naturally an extremely dangerous thing to do. This was because there was a high chance that one would not be able to survive. Not far from where Li Zongjio had fainted, one could see that a white lotus was quietly blooming. Although this lotus was white, its stem was as red as blood. It was quietly extending towards the place where Li Zongjio had fainted. It was prepared to absorb Li Zongjio's fresh blood when Li Zongjio was completely dead. This way, it could become its own nourishment. A stem slowly emerged from the ground and slowly wrapped around Li Zongjio's body. Sacred Flame Royal City. Lone Moon Palace. Yi Lone Moon had already signed the order for the Hidden Moon Guards to move out. At this moment, 15 hidden moon guards were kneeling on one knee in front of Yi Lone Moon. In their eyes, there was only loyalty. As long as Yi Lone Moon ordered them to kill someone, they would move out to kill that person at any time. This was a realm that ordinary people could achieve. They were a group of death warriors that Yi Lone Moon had raised. They could often help them to solve some difficult and complicated diseases. Listen up, all of you. I don't have enough patience anymore. Tonight, I want to see Li Zongjio's corpse placed in front of me. I have already informed the Vermilion Bird Army. You can only attack on Incandescent Mountain. Once you leave Incandescent Mountain, you can't attack. Do you hear me clearly? Yi Lone Moon said. After so many days, they were still unable to remove Beiho Liang and Li Zongjio's heads. Yi Lone Moon could not even lift his head in front of Yi Lan Tian. Yes, Master. The 15 hidden moon guards shouted. After the hidden moon guards retreated, another group of people dressed in green walked out. These people were all experts, but they were disguised as such. Usually, they did not move out much, but they were all veterans and their faces were unfamiliar. Beiho Liang will go and meet his lover tonight. You know what to do. There was a knife above the word, lust. For a disciple of an aristocratic family like Beiho Liang, he was rich and had connections. It was not a problem for him to casually raise a few girls in the city. After Yi Lone Moon found out about this, he quickly took control of Beiho Liang's favorite mistress and made her invite Beiho Liang to come out. The matters in the city. Yi Lone Moon had already informed his elder sister about this. No one can stop me. The Yi family's great cause will be mine. Yi Lone Moon turned the teacup in his hand. Finally, he squeezed the teacup in his hand and a series of cracking sounds were heard. Chapter 346. Li Zongjio seemed to be in a muddle-headed state at this moment. Suddenly he felt a clear current surging through his body. This was the feeling of breaking through one's limit. It was like a very stubborn piece of cowhide that was constantly being pushed back. Suddenly, the limit of the cowhide was broken. It was this feeling of enlightenment that immediately woke Li Zongjio up from his muddle-headed state. Boom! Suddenly, a large amount of new energy gushed out from the almost dried-up source and poured into Li Zongjio's body, flowing into every part of his body. His entire body was once again glowing with vitality. When Li Zongjio opened his eyes, he found that he could not move. It turned out that he was entangled by some blood rattan that came from nowhere. It was also these blood rattan that gave Li Zongjio the final blow. At the most critical moment, it directly caused great damage to Li Zongjio. That was why Li Zongjio was able to break through his limit. Otherwise, who knew how long it would take for him to break through this realm? Where did this thing come from? Li Zongjio immediately snorted. The blood rattan seemed to have realized that Li Zongjio had woken up. Immediately, the rattan suddenly tightened, wanting to crush Li Zongjio directly. However, there was no chance now. Li Zongjio, who had reacted, immediately released all the energy in his body and instantly shattered the blood rattan. Boom! The blood rattan exploded into pieces that filled the sky. Some of the blood rattan's fresh red juice was sprinkled on Li Zongjio's body. This juice originally had an extremely high temperature, even more terrifying than magma. However, when it fell on Li Zongjio's body, it did not even ignite a single strand of his hair. This was because Li Zongjio's current physical strength had far exceeded the temperature that could melt it. It could not hurt Li Zongjio. I've broken through. This feels pretty good. But what is this thing? Li Zongjio saw the blood vine fragments on the ground. He picked up a small piece and sniffed it. There was a faint smell of blood, but at the same time, there was a holy aura. This thing looks familiar. Li Zongjio immediately took out a small booklet from his bosom. When he flipped it open, he saw the blazing blood white lotus ranked first. Evil on the outside but holy on the inside. What an image! Your so-called holiness is all from the height of the accumulation of blood. It seemed that there were indeed countless treasures on the incandescent mountain. He had found the incandescent white lotus so quickly. Although the blazing white lotus was a plant, it could move freely on blazing mountain with its roots. It was just that its speed was a little slow. However, it was able to conceal its aura, making it impossible for people to find it. By the time Li Zongjio chased after it again, the blazing blood-white lotus had already disappeared without a trace. Trying to escape in front of me? Li Zongjio grabbed a handful of soil on the ground. His mind power instantly penetrated the ground and immediately found the roots of the blazing blood-white lotus. Previously, these blood vines had wanted to absorb Li Zongjio as nutrients. However, the sudden increase in damage had already prevented Li Zongjio from breaking through the limits of the ancient golden tyrannical body technique. Now, Li Zongjio's physical strength alone was enough to fight against a Yuan Zong elite. Compared to his previous life, it was still a little lacking. In his previous life, Li Zongjio had refined a Daluo Vajra elixir for himself. After consuming it, his physical strength had soared rapidly and directly broken through the limits of his mortal body. His physical body had the strength of a Yuan monarch elite. However, Li Zongjio was different now. His physical strength had been honed bit by bit. Therefore, during this process, the power accumulated in Li Zongjio's body was innumerable. In other words, there was already a lot of hidden potential in Li Zongjio's body. If it were to erupt, it would be a terrifying level. Just as Li Zongjio was chasing after the blazing blood-white lotus in the valley, there was also a group of people who were quietly moving forward despite the high temperature. The person leading the group was a woman. She was only wearing a special singlet and a pair of shorts. Her slender legs and forearms were exposed, and her skin was dark brown. Her face was covered with a cloth to help her breathe. If she breathed in the surrounding air directly, it would be too hot. If she breathed it in, it would definitely harm her internal organs. There were 5 people behind her, all of them holding pickaxes and carrying a special rattan basket. "Survey the surroundings," the woman said. She stood on a rock and looked around. At this moment, they seemed to be in the middle of a furnace. There was a dagger at the woman's waist. The dagger was completely black, but it was able to reveal a trace of light. Even in such a hot environment, there was no change. One could even see the cold light emitting from the dagger. Someone used a pickaxe to dig a hole in the ground and grabbed a handful of soil, trying to find some information through the soil. "It's nearby. Be careful, the polar rock snake is extremely good at camouflage." "Yes, Captain." As soon as the words left his mouth, the entire ground began to tremble. The 6 of them immediately became vigilant. Then, they saw the ground burst open and a terrifying figure instantly emerged from the ground. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at one of them. "It's a level 4 polar rock snake. Everyone be careful," the woman shouted. She instantly pulled out the dagger at her waist and chased after the polar rock snake. Boom! The few of them immediately engaged in a chaotic battle with the polar rock snake. The person who was targeted and bitten at the beginning was also rescued by others. If he had been a step late, he might have been eaten by the polar rock snake. "I've been waiting for you for so long." There was a trace of excitement in the woman's eyes. A flame suddenly curled up from the dagger. Terrifying fire elemental energy instantly covered her entire body, bringing her along as she charged forward. Boom! The instant the figure moved, the polar rock snake also began to roll, causing dust to soar into the sky. Such a terrifying attack caused the girl to be shocked. If not for her powerful Yuan power, she would have long been crushed by the polar rock snake. On the mountaintop, Li Zongjio also slowly walked towards the valley. The blood vines of the blazing blood-white lotus were spreading in this direction. However, before he could find the blazing blood-white lotus, Li Zongjio heard a violent vibration. It was accompanied by a series of low roars. Someone is fighting with a meta-beast? Logically speaking, where there are meta-beasts, there should be something like a guardian elixir. Thinking of this, Li Zongjio also excitedly chased in the direction of the sound. The opportunity that Ling Yan mentioned was very important to Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio was also very lucky to have broken through the ancient golden tyrant body technique on the first day. In the next 2 days, he could also properly train. First, he had to test his body's strength. The control of one's own strength was also very important. Being able to encounter a local meta-beast, Li Zongjio was also impatient to come into contact with it. After breaking through, The surrounding temperature was no longer a problem for Li Zongjio. Hence, Li Zongjio's original route was also to head towards the depths of the valley. When Li Zongjio's figure rushed downwards, a yellow rat emerged from the ground. A khaki-colored rat crawled out from the crack in the ground. When it saw the direction that Li Zongjio was heading in, it immediately ran down the mountain. Very quickly, it fell into the hands of a black-clothed man. In an instant, the black-clothed man heard it. After chattering for a while, the black-clothed man looked in the direction of the valley. Found it, Chase? Whoosh! Over 10 figures immediately erupted with terrifying speed and force at this moment. Boom! Chapter 347. Inside the valley. Rocks flew everywhere. Su Mo gritted his teeth in anger when he saw that his team members had been seriously injured. The three of you, take the wounded and retreat. Tai Hua, you and I will kill this guy. A man called Tai Hua immediately carried an iron rod in his hand. The iron rod spun in the air and immediately blocked some of the flying rocks. Got it. Tai Hua first covered the three of them as they retreated with the wounded. Then, he carried the terrifying firepower of the iron rod in his hand and went around the polar rock snake. He leaped and smashed the iron rod on the head of the polar rock snake. Clang! The flames on the iron rod immediately dissipated. The polar rock snake's body defense was too strong. It could be said that it was invulnerable. Only Sumo's dagger could scratch the polar rock snake. The other people's weapons and even Yuanli could not cause the slightest damage to the polar rock snake. Boom! The polar rock snake rolled over and pressed the iron pestle under its body, smashing it into the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Tai Hua was seriously injured. Seeing this, Sumo's figure also flew up. The dagger in his hand immediately turned into a ray of light and swept towards the head of the polar rock snake. Swoosh! Bang! The polar rock snake's head was hit by the dagger. However, this little bit of damage was not even a scratch to it. On the other hand, Su Mo had directly lost a sharp weapon, so it was impossible for him to injure this terrifying fellow by relying solely on his origin energy. At this moment, he could only retreat. Go! Su Mo carried Tai Hua. Tai Hua's sternum was broken. At this moment, he was able to open his eyes because of his training. Otherwise, he would have fainted. No, Captain, I can't escape. Hurry up and go. I'll hold it back. Tai Hua said firmly. At the same time, he pointed at a pitch-black iron ball in his hand. Lightning palm. Once thrown, the area within a radius of 5 feet would be covered by terrifying iron pieces. There was no place to escape. No, I will never give up on my team members, Su Mo immediately said. However, the polar rock snake wouldn't listen to their conversation. Immediately, it rose to a height of nearly 100 meters. Then, it smashed down towards Su Mo and his companion. Damn it! This move was unavoidable. Could it be that Su Mo really wanted to abandon his companions? This was absolutely impossible. She would never let such a thing happen. Get out of here! Su Mo grabbed the iron rod by the collar and threw it out. The thunder palm was also caught in Sumo's hand. She had already made up her mind that once this fellow landed, she would perish together with it. So, Su Mo had already made up his mind to die. But all of a sudden, a strong gust of wind swept past the top of his head and a figure appeared above him. What? A trace of surprise flashed across Sumo's eyes. The figure that rushed out seemed to be unafraid of death as it crashed into the polar rock snake. At this speed, not only will the polar rock snake not suffer any damage, but its internal organs will also be damaged by the shock. Su Mo could already see Li Zongjio being smashed into a pile of meat paste. Immediately, he couldn't help but lower his head. If he were to become a pile of meat paste in an instant, it would be too miserable. However, Su Mo guessed wrong. Li Zongjio, who was flying over, crashed into the polar rock snake's abdomen with a boom. Immediately, the polar rock snake's body fell backward. Obviously, it was knocked over by Li Zongjio. After the collision, Li Zongjio's feet lightly tapped on the air. Once again, he rose into the air, raised his fist, and directly smashed towards the polar rock snake's head. Boom! Boom! Su Mo stood there in a daze. He didn't even have time to throw out the thunder palm in his hand. All he could see was that the polar rock snake was being violently beaten up by Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio's fist wind was swift and fierce. His fist hit the dagger stuck in the snake's head. Bang! The dagger directly pierced through the polar rock snake's head and came out from its chin. The dagger actually penetrated the polar rock snake's head. The dagger fell to the ground not far from Suemo. When Suemo saw this scene, he was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. This was simply too ferocious. Suddenly, the polar rock snake's body, which was nearly 150 meters long, rose into the air and left the ground. Then, it made a circle in the air and fiercely fell down. Boom! As he fell, the entire incandescent mountain seemed to shake. Such a terrifying scene. Such a shocking scene. Suemo couldn't believe it for a long time. Tai Chiao, who was lying on the ground, also opened his eyes wide in surprise. Could it be that the mighty ape god is the reincarnation? After falling to the ground, the polar rock snake had already been smashed into pieces. Li Zongjio glanced at his fist. This is a little more fierce than I thought. Previously, Li Zongjio had estimated his strength roughly. In terms of strength, he estimated that there wasn't much difference between him and the polar rock snake. They should be in a stalemate. Li Zongjio was worried that he would be defeated by the polar rock snake. However, when his fist landed, he immediately felt that the body of the polar rock snake was as soft as a piece of cotton. It didn't even have the slightest resistance. One punch was enough to seriously injure the polar rock snake. Li Zongjio's ancient golden tyrant body technique had just broken through to the 3rd level. It actually achieved such an effect. Judging from the latter's aura, the polar rock snake should be at the 4th grade origin ancestor realm. In other words, it was a middle rank 4 origin beast. However, as the latter grew up in White Blaze Mountain, the strength it possessed was much greater and its defense was even more terrifying. It was much stronger than an ordinary rank 4 middle grade Yuan beast and could even be compared to a rank 4 high grade Yuan beast. Suemo was only at the 3rd grade origin ancestor realm. Being able to fight with the polar rock snake until now was already pretty good. However, it would be difficult to kill the polar rock snake just by relying on such a fierce fighting style. If Li Zongjio hadn't arrived in time, Suemo would have been dead. With one punch, the polar rock snake's head defense had been smashed. Then, Li Zongjio grabbed the rank 4 origin crystal from the polar rock snake's head. This item alone was worth a lot of money and could be used to refine some effective elixirs. That darn thing should be nearby. Li Zongjio leaped and landed in front of Suemo. When Suemo saw that the person who came was actually a teenager, his eyes went blank for a moment. This wasn't a dream, right? The person who beat up a rank 4 soul beast like it was a monkey was actually this fair-skinned young man in front of him? After the breakthrough, Li Zongjio's skin had also undergone a transformation. Although it wasn't too fair, to Suemo and the others, he was a real fair-skinned teenager. Li Zongjio was also attracted by Sumo's healthy figure. With Li Zongjio's experience, he had seen all kinds of beauties. However, when he saw Sumo's healthy figure and the slightly bulging muscles on his body, he was attracted to him. There didn't seem to be any extra fat on his body. He had such a healthy physique, yet he was wearing so little. How could anyone not look at him? Have you seen this flower before? Li Zongjio opened the herbal booklet in his hand. It depicted the appearance of the blazing blood white lotus. Are you looking for the blazing blood white lotus? Suemo lived in the Blazing Blood Mountain, so he naturally knew about the blazing blood white lotus. Have you seen it before? No, I haven't. The blazing blood white lotus is invisible. Once you approach it, you will be controlled by it and become a walking corpse. Suemo explained succinctly. This was to tell Li Zongjio how terrifying this thing was. Although Li Zongjio's strength seemed to be good, it was still not enough to deal with the blazing blood white lotus. In the past, even a Yuan King-level elite had almost lost his life to this thing. He had had no choice but to retreat. If he hadn't left, he probably wouldn't have been able to. Thanks. Li Zongjio turned around and walked away. Since she didn't know, he could only search for it himself. Wait a minute. Suemo called out to Li Zongjio. Can you sell me the yuan crystals you have? This time, they were hunting the polar rock snake precisely for the crystal of the polar rock snake. With the yuan crystals of the polar rock snake, their entire team would be able to break through. Therefore, the yuan crystals were very important to them. I can pay you 1 million gold yuan, but I have to pay you in 3 months. I don't have any money now. Chapter 348. 1 million gold yuan? For Li Zongjio, who already had 100 million gold yuan, this amount of money was of no use at all. However, the most important thing was that the yuan crystal in his hand was definitely worth more than 1 million gold yuan. According to purple yuan, it wouldn't be a problem even if it was sold for 3 or 4 million purple yuan. After all, this kind of special yuan crystal had a higher value. If the price was agreed upon, then it would be fine. However, he actually said that he would pay after 3 months. Just based on the current situation, who knew how many changes were happening every day? Some people might not even be able to survive after 3 months. Now that he had given it to him, what would he do if he ran away? Therefore, this was a very inconceivable deal. In fact, even Su Mo himself didn't dare to believe it when he said it. That yuan crystal might be very precious to people like Li Zongjio, but it wasn't necessary. However, for Su Mo, it was very precious and very hard to come by. Their team had spent nearly a month searching in the Baiji Mountains. In order to find the polar rock snake, even though they knew that their chances of winning were very low, they still fought with their lives on the line. From this, one could see how important this yuan crystal was to them. Li Zongjio didn't directly leave. Instead, he turned around and glanced at Su Mo. Su Mo's heart moved. It seemed that there was still room for discussion. He was just afraid that Li Zongjio would ignore them. If that was the case, then there was no room for discussion. Just based on the performance just now, Li Zongjio could kill them all with one hand. Even if he stood there and let them attack him, he probably wouldn't be able to defeat them. Who are you people? Li Zongjio asked. We are the Vermilion Bird Army. Su Mo said. When he said this, Su Mo's heart was filled with pride. However, he didn't tell Li Zongjio the number of the army. This was considered a military secret. Li Zongjio threw the item over to Su Mo. After Su Mo caught it, his face was filled with disbelief. Feeling the vigorous energy released from the object in his hand, Su Mo's heart was shocked. Was this the polar rock snake's crystal? Sure enough, it was filled with terrifying energy. It was amazing. Such power. However, since Li Zongjio had given the crystal to her so easily, there must be a condition. I trust the reputation of the Vermilion Bird Army. Other than the 1 million, I want you to help me find medicinal ingredients. Bring me all the precious medicinal ingredients that have appeared around here. Li Zongjio said. He was not a saint, and this was merely a transaction. Although he didn't care for 1 million gold coins, it wasn't a small amount, so he wasn't willing to give it up. In addition, since the other party was the Vermilion Bird Army, then the Vermilion Bird Army was stationed near White Blaze Mountain. They must be more familiar with White Blaze Mountain than Li Zongjio. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to find the polar rock snake so accurately and follow it all the way here. In order to increase efficiency, Li Zongjio didn't mind losing some. After all, the polar rock snake's crystal didn't have much use for him. However, for an alchemist, it was beneficial to collect more of these things. No problem. Su Mo immediately agreed. You want to find medicinal ingredients? Are you an alchemist? Or an alchemist? Su Mo looked at Li Zongjio in surprise. At such a young age, not only was his battle strength strong, but he also knew how to refine pills. If that was the case, then wouldn't he be a monstrous existence? Cough cough. Tai Hua was also helped up by Su Mo. After obtaining this crystal, the two of them didn't know how grateful they were to Li Zongjio. Moreover, if it wasn't for Li Zongjio's help, then they probably would have died here today. Just this life-saving grace alone was already difficult for them to repay. I'm from the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Li Zongjio said. Looking at the injured Tai Hua, he flicked his finger and a third-grade healing pill fell into his hand. These pills were all casually refined by Li Zongjio. They were all made from leftover materials. After reaching a certain level of cultivation, doing these things casually would be more effective than some people going all out. Heavenly Star Medicine Manor? I didn't expect him to be a great talent from the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Sumo's eyes suddenly lit up. The Heavenly Star Medicine Manor had considerable prestige among these soldiers. If it weren't for the fact that their alchemists had been attached to the rear during the expedition, which guaranteed them absolute medical care, no one would have been so foolish as to rush out and risk their lives like that. There would always be some students from the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor who would join the army. They were really capable, but some of them had bad tempers. But for those who were capable, there was no problem with a bad temper. Since everyone was considered as one of them, then Sumo didn't need to be too reserved. This is a third-grade pill. My God, my God. Tai Hua held the third-grade pill in his hand and smelled the fragrance on it. He almost fainted. This thing was too powerful. It wasn't that Tai Hua was ignorant. He had seen third-grade pills before. However, this kind of thing was only available to the backbone of the army. They had an endless supply of ordinary healing pills. But at this moment, they actually had the opportunity to obtain a third-grade pill. This made Tai Hua extremely touched. I want to have a taste of what a grade 3 medicinal pill tastes like. Tai Hua was extremely touched. If you don't eat it, I'll take it and hand it in. Sumo looked at Tai Hua, who was reluctant to put it in his mouth for a long time and couldn't help but laugh. This kid was really naughty. But as Sumo's team members, they had suffered too much. That was the reason why Sumo wanted to win this competition. Hey, little brother, you've helped me so much. I won't let you suffer. We've explored more than half of the White Blaze Mountain in a month. I'll lead the way. I guarantee you'll have a bountiful harvest. Sumo said, All right, I'll give you half an hour to recover. After half an hour, we'll set off. Li Zongjio said, Lend me your dagger for a while. Sumo casually threw his treasured dagger to Li Zongjio. Could it be that he was afraid that Li Zongjio would snatch it away? This was a 4th-grade Metabeast crystal and now it was a 3rd-grade pill. Both of them were very valuable. Even if he took his dagger away, it wouldn't be worth it. That was why Sumo thought so. He was very relieved and threw the dagger to Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio held the dagger in his hand and ran to the front of the polar rock snake. From Sumo's angle, it was very obvious that he opened the mouth of the polar rock snake and walked in. So alchemist is such a profession. Sumo saw Li Zongjio's actions and couldn't help but exclaim. Li Zongjio only took the gallbladder of the polar rock snake. Originally, he didn't want it. However, the gallbladder of this thing should be good. In the future, it would be somewhat useful when refining pills. Li Zongjio's trip this time wouldn't be in vain. Half an hour later, the sky had turned dark. Tai Hua, who had been recovering from his injuries, stood up very excitedly at this moment with a surprised expression on his face. Holy shit, my injuries are all healed. Not only that, I also feel that my strength has increased by 3 levels. My eyesight seems to be better. Damn, this is simply a divine pill. Tai Hua couldn't believe it. This medicinal pill could actually bring about such great benefits. He even felt that his blood and chi were now vigorous. He couldn't wait to run 8 or 10 laps around the White Blaze Mountain to exercise and vent. You're showing off. That guy has been in the snake's stomach for half an hour. Don't tell me he suffocated to death. Just when Sumo was about to go forward to check, he happened to see the stomach of the polar rock snake suddenly bulging. Then, Li Zongjio opened a hole and walked out. It's about time. Let's go. Where did you find this polar rock snake? Chapter 349. Even though Li Zongjio's body wasn't dirty after staying in the snake's stomach for a while because of the protection of his yuan qi, the smell was indeed a little heavy. At first, Sumo didn't know why Li Zongjio stayed in the snake's stomach for so long. It was only later that they found out that Li Zongjio had been analyzing the things that the snake had eaten in its stomach. Then, based on the things that the snake had eaten, he determined what the polar rock snake had eaten in the vicinity and what might be growing there. The incandescent mountain was very wide. Just the height alone was more than a few hundred feet. The area it covered, in addition to the evolution of the mountain's terrain, was naturally very terrifying. Therefore, it was very convenient for Li Zongjio to have someone to lead the way. Over here. Su Emo really admired Li Zongjio. The three of them set off. Along the way, Su Emo and Tai Chi also displayed the strength of the Vermilion Bird Army. In such a hot place, they were still able to bring out 100% of their mental state. They often landed on the ground to explore and find their way. Night fell. Even though there was no sun, the temperature of the incandescent mountain didn't drop. Instead, it gave people a very stuffy feeling. It was as if the entire incandescent mountain was a very large steamer. Everyone inside was in a very stuffy state. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 15 figures quickly flashed past. Previously, they had compared Li Zongjio's route, so they also landed in front of a canyon and set up an ambush here. The heat avoidance pills we have can only last for 2 hours. In half an hour, we must take care of Li Zongjio and return at full speed. The leader of the Hidden Moon Guard said. The experts behind him were also in high spirits. In order to be able to move freely in the incandescent mountain, they had to pay a huge price. They had also paid a great price. One heat avoidance pill could last for 10 hours, but as they went deeper, the effect of the heat avoidance pill became weaker and weaker. They had to take more. Therefore, in the next hour, if they could not cripple Li Zongjio, they would be the ones to die. He's here. Up ahead, a figure was walking on the path. Although the path was pitch black, the appearance of this person instantly attracted the attention of all the Hidden Moon Guards. Even under the night sky, Holy Yen City still appeared lively and glorious. In a rather secluded pavilion, a woman in a white dress had been waiting for a long time. Suddenly, a man stuck his head out from behind a nearby wall and waved at the woman in front of him. Little you. Brother Liang. The woman turned around and was pleasantly surprised when she saw Beiho Liang. Beiho Liang was also looking left and right. Then, he carefully walked up to Xiaoya. Xiaoyu, what's wrong? Why did you call me out so urgently? Is your father's illness getting worse? I'll give you 100,000 gold coins. Take it first. Beiho Liang said. Then, he took out a stack of banknotes from his sleeve and stuffed it into Xiaoyu's hand. Brother Liang. Xiaoya wanted to say something, but it was too late. Several figures jumped down from the pavilion. They held a shiny long blade in their hands. When they landed, they did not say anything and directly rushed toward Beiho Liang. When Beiho Liang saw this, he immediately pushed Xiaoyu away. Shit! After Xiaoya was pushed away, her body was directly pierced through by a blade. The sharp white blade in her chest was bleeding. Xiaoya's body slowly fell and was quickly pushed to the side. Beiho Liang wanted to escape, but he realized that he was already surrounded. There was no way out. Don't kill me. How much money do you want? I'll give it to you. Beiho Liang knew that he was going to die, but there was no other way. His strong desire to live made him want to struggle. Even if he was a student of Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Even if he was a young master of a family in Black North Giant City. In Black North Giant City, he was nothing. If he offended the nobles, they had countless ways to make him disappear, or even disappear without a trace. Beiho Liang took a wrong step. When he touched the sun. When he started to have a grudge with Li Zongjio, he was already dead. This time, whether he went to White Blaze Mountain or not, his end was the same. The leader of the black-clothed men walked forward. With a wave of his blade, he chopped off Beiho Liang's head. Bang! Beiho Liang's head rolled on the ground, blood splattering everywhere. This young master, who could call the wind and summon the rain in Black North Giant City, became a corpse without any struggle. Before he died, he did not even leave behind any last words. Even if Beiho Liang's family really came to investigate this matter, when they started to investigate, they would know how big Beiho Liang's family was. They would know how big of a trouble Beiho Liang had encountered. At that time, they would naturally shrink back. If they wanted to confront the Yi clan head-on, then they would have to wait for their clan to be exterminated. The Yi family had lost one person. They only lost one person from the Bei family. That was already too easy for them. If they could not back down, Even if they destroyed the entire Bei family, they would have nothing to say. Want to resist? Sorry, you can think about it. Take away the head, burn the body, and throw the rest into the river. The leader said. Immediately, someone walked forward and used a piece of black cloth to wrap Bei Ho Liang's head. The rest of the body was poured into a pile of white powder. The white powder instantly ignited the body. It was colorless and odorless. The entire process of killing and leaving did not exceed 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the place was completely clean. When Bei Ho Liang's head was placed in front of Yi Lone Moon, the bitter face of Yi Lone Moon finally showed a trace of a smile. If I can't even deal with this kind of trash, then I will really become a trash. Yi Lone Moon sneered, then looked in the direction of White Blaze Mountain. Now, he was waiting for Li Zongjiu's head to be placed in front of him. White Blaze Mountain. The leader of the Hidden Moon Guards looked at the body under his feet in disbelief. Just a moment ago, when they were about to ambush Li Zongjiu, 2 people suddenly charged out from the side. These 2 people rushed into the camp of the Hidden Moon Guards and instantly reaped the heads of 3 people as if they were harvesting chives. The remaining people wanted to attack, but they realized that Li Zongjiu had already rushed up. When they faced Li Zongjiu, they realized what they were facing. When Li Zongjiu attacked, they did not have any room to resist. Looking at the crushed heads on the ground, they knew how terrifying Li Zongjiu's combat power was. Moon? Why isn't your name in the information I have? You're not from the Yi family? At this time, all of his subordinates were dead. Only the strongest one was still standing, but his arms had been completely cut off. 2 of his arms fell directly to the ground. He did not have any ability to fight back. In front of Li Zongjiu, he did not have any room to resist. Therefore, Li Zongjiu found the token of the Hidden Moon Guards on him. When he saw Li Zongjiu take out a thick book of information, he was shocked. Could it be that this Li Zongjiu was here to deal with the young master? Why isn't there any? Li Zongjiu flipped through the information in his hands. The information that Bei Ho Liang had given him didn't mention the existence of the Hidden Moon Guards. This meant that the Hidden Moon Guards had either been sent by someone else, or Bei Ho Liang didn't have the qualifications to come into contact with them. You're the Hidden Moon Guards? People from the Lone Moon Mansion? Su Mo said in shock when he saw the token in Li Zongjiu's hand. You know them? Su Mo walked over and nodded. That's right. The Yi family's second young master, Yi Lone Moon, has a group of private soldiers in his mansion called the Hidden Moon Guards. They have not been mobilized until now. Of course, they have always been under our control. Sumo said. At this moment, it was the captain of the Hidden Moon Guard's turn to be shocked. He never thought that his Hidden Moon Guards, which were so well hidden, would still be found out by the other party. Who exactly are you? The Hidden Moon Guards had already guessed that Li Zongjiu was not just a simple country bumpkin. You bunch of hoodlums and bandits. Do you really think that no one knows what you're doing? It's just that it's not time yet. If we want to kill you, our Vermilion Bird Army will move out and kill you in less than 3 days. Chapter 350. The reason why Su Mo said this was because the person in front of him was destined to die. It was only now that the Hidden Moon Guards realized how terrifying the power of the imperial family was. The Yi family seemed to be able to cover the sky with one hand, but in reality, even the private soldiers of the Yi family's second young master were under their control. It was just that the Yi family did not need to care about you at the moment. They did not care about you at all. That was why such a situation occurred. They allowed you to develop freely, but everything was under their control. Although the Hidden Moon Guards were rarely deployed, in order to train these Hidden Moon Guards, the people in Lone Moon's residence had done many shady things. That was why Su Mo hated these people to the core. This Yi family is really arrogant. Li Zongjiu could not help but shake his head. Li Zongjiu always had the feeling of a tiger being bullied by a dog. However, if this was the case, Li Zongjiu's strength in his previous life was not as good as his current strength at this age. If Li Zongjiu had to face the Yi clan back then, he would have died many times over. But it was different this time. Although I had no enmity with you in my previous life, in this life, you just had to provoke me. Don't worry, The Yi family will accompany you soon. After Li Zongjio finished speaking, he directly plucked off the head of the hidden moon guards and searched through their storage rings. He realized that other than some clothes, there was not a single cent. The only rich person was the leader. But the money in his hands was only enough to cover the expenses of the entire team for a few days. They were really poor. This is a heat avoidance pill. It can resist the heat of the incandescent mountain. Su Mo also found some things. The heat avoidance pill could be considered as a luxury item in this place. It was a consumable item that needed to be consumed at all times. Usually, the consumption of these consumables was very terrifying. You can keep it for yourselves. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said, "From the performance just now, it seemed that the Vermilion Bird Army hated these people very much. After all, these people were some of the nobles in the palace. How many of the nobles' deeds were clean? The Vermilion Bird Army was different from other armies. The purpose of their existence was to intimidate the ministers in the imperial court. Although there were also imperial guards in the palace, the imperial guards were more like a bunch of decorations. They were placed there to make a strong impression. Usually, they were used to deal with small thieves and the like. In fact, they couldn't even leave the palace within their jurisdiction. However, the Vermilion Bird Army was different. If they were stationed outside the city, they could send out a signal from within the city, and they would be able to assemble within an hour and provide reinforcements. Furthermore, the outside world did not know much about this mysterious army. How many people were there? What was their average strength? Who was their commander? Those were all very secretive information. Even if you obtained some information, there was no way to verify it. There was no guarantee that the information you obtained was true. The existence of such a team was the biggest threat to these people. The Vermilion Bird Army knew the nobles in the city like the back of their hand and would follow them regularly. Naturally, they knew what these people were doing in the dark. However, they usually didn't have the chance because Su Mo and the others were soldiers and couldn't act as they pleased. However, it was different in Mount Baiji. They encountered them by accident, and their main target was Li Zongjio. They only killed these people to protect Li Zongjio. The dignified hidden moon guards couldn't even defeat 3 people. Except for Li Zongjio. Su Mo and Tai Ji's fighting strength was also very frightening. They let these people know how powerful the Vermilion Bird Army was. For Li Zongjio, the sudden appearance of the hidden moon guards was only a small interlude. He didn't even need to pay too much attention to them. In his eyes, these assassins were just a bunch of trash. However, these trash had angered this sleeping lion. When the 3 of them arrived in front of a stone valley, they could feel from afar that there was an unusual aura coming from this stone valley. In front of us is the very famous chaotic stone valley. Most people will become deranged after entering it and become a lunatic. Generally, if there are fugitives, we will exile them here. Sumo said. It turned out that the polar rock snake that they were chasing was also discovered in this chaotic stone valley. They had set up an ambush to ambush the polar rock snake, but it didn't work. In the end, Su Mo led a small team to chase after it. In the end, they chased after it for a month. They didn't even know that the Heavenly Day Medicine Manor had entered the mountain. Fortunately, Li Zongjio stepped in and pulled them back at the most critical moment. As for this chaotic stone valley, they usually didn't dare to get close to it. Some people didn't believe in heresy, but they usually ended up in a very miserable state. So far, there was no exception. Their Lord Commander came to take a look at this place and directly ordered everyone not to get close to it. It became a forbidden area for the Vermilion Bird Army. Su Mo glanced at Tai Chiao. If they entered this chaotic stone valley, they would be violating the military order. Tai Chiao, stay here and help. If anything happens to me, immediately return to the camp. No, Captain. I have to stay by your side and protect you. Tai Chiao hurriedly said. Seeing that Tai Chiao was about to go crazy, Su Mo immediately said, If you go in with me and something happens to me, who will go and find help? Tai Chiao stopped after hearing Su Mo's words. He thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense. That's right. Then I'll stay here. If anything happens to Captain, immediately release the signal. Tai Chiao said, Good job. Su Mo patted Tai Chiao's shoulder and looked at Li Zongjio. He didn't have time to waste with them and directly walked in. When he saw the chaotic stone valley for the first time, Li Zongjio knew this was the place he wanted to come to. The surroundings were filled with powerful mental strength. Of course, this mental strength was not concentrated, but scattered. It was like a powerful army, but they were scattered here and were not under command. Therefore, when you approached the fire, only the nearby soldiers would attack. If this powerful mind power was concentrated, even a Yuan King elite would find it difficult to resist. Li Zongjio exclaimed in his heart. At the same time, he felt an unbearable itch in his heart. It was obvious that the things in this chaotic stone valley were extremely nutritious. It would definitely be a very good tonic for mind power. Don't go beyond 5 feet from me. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you. Li Zongjio looked at Su Mo, who was chasing after him, and said indifferently. Su Mo didn't care. It wasn't certain who would be protecting who. Combat power was one thing, experience was another. After all, this was the territory of the Vermilion Bird Army. If she was led by the nose by Li Zongjio, it would be too embarrassing. This is the territory of the Vermilion Bird Army. We have already done a lot of investigation here. I guarantee that you won't be at a disadvantage if you follow me. Su Mo said and then took a step forward. She directly led the way. Chapter 351. Within the chaotic stone valley, Li Zongjio walked towards the place where the mental energy was concentrated. When he got closer, he could feel that Su Mo, who was beside him, couldn't hold on any longer. We've already gone too deep into the chaotic stone valley. Even people of the same age as us couldn't get within 500 meters. We've already walked close to 1,000 meters. Su Mo said worriedly. Shu, it's coming. Li Zongjio quickly waved his hand. The instant Su Mo spoke, Li Zongjio also felt a wave of energy quickly approaching. Rumble. Suddenly, a terrifying force burst out from the ground in front of them. It seemed like some kind of giant beast was traveling under the ground. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion, and it appeared in front of the two of them. Careful! Su Mo immediately shouted as he held the dagger in his hand. The origin of the other party was unknown, so he had to be prepared to go all out. Blood Vine! The wave of energy rushed in front of Su Mo and was about to reach his feet. However, Li Zongjio took a step forward and threw out a ball of obsidian fire. Instantly, the thing underground rushed out. Boom! From Su Mo's point of view, the thing that was forced out was the assassin of the night that the Vermilion Bird Army had to face. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time they had faced the terrifying Blood Vine. However, compared to the Blood Vines they encountered in the outside world, the Blood Vine in front of them was like an enlarged version of the Blood Vine. Just this one alone was equivalent to the polar rock snake that they had faced before. So thick. Li Zongjio was shocked when he saw the blood vine that he had forced out. Previously, when he was cultivating the ancient golden tyrant body technique, the blood vine had appeared. If it wasn't for the blood vine's sneak attack, Li Zongjio might not have had the chance to break through his body's limit. However, the blood vine that bound Li Zongjio was only as thick as a thumb. Why was the blood vine in front of him so terrifying? Even Li Zongjio was shocked when he saw it. This blood vine is an assassin of the White Blaze Mountain. It appears and disappears unpredictably and is incomparably ferocious. Moreover, there seems to be no end to it. Su Mo said in a deep voice. In fact, what Su Mo didn't mention was that the vines they had seen in the army were at most half as thick as this blood vine. They weren't as thick as this one before them. This kind of power was even more terrifying. However, Li Zongjio did not take Su Mo's words to heart. Li Zongjio already knew what these blood-red vines were and where they came from. The blood vine that had bound him must have been a branch of the blazing blood-white lotus. Based on the current situation, the roots of this blazing blood-white lotus were so wide that it occupied the entire chaotic stone valley. This chaotic stone valley had obviously become the territory of the blazing blood-white lotus. The blazing blood-white lotus was also described in the herbal booklet. The blazing blood-white lotus was a kind of herb that could release mental fluctuations. Therefore, it was extremely dangerous. Li Zongjio and Su Mo had now intruded into the territory of the blazing blood-white lotus. However, the main body of the blazing blood-white lotus had yet to awaken. On the other hand, the blood-red vines in front of them had an extremely strong desire for living things. After sensing the two of them, they quickly rushed towards them. Li Zongjio directly rushed out and attacked the thick blood-red vine. A small black iron hammer appeared in his hand. Mysterious lightning hammer. Boom! This hammer also carried the power of Li Zongjio's obsidian fire. In an instant, the thick blood-red vine was shattered by Li Zongjio. His entire body burned and spread towards the depths of the ground. What? Su Mo couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Li Zongjio destroy the blood-red vine in front of him with a single move. It should be known that the blood-red vines were extremely difficult to deal with. In order to kill a single blood-red vine, it usually required the strength of an entire team. This was because the blood-red vine could continuously grow and was extremely flexible. I'd like to see how many tentacles you have. Li Zongjio's eyes flickered with a cold light. Immediately, the mysterious lightning hammer in his hand made a loud boom. It smashed onto the ground. Boom! The ground of the chaotic stone valley suddenly shook violently as if there was an earthquake. In an instant, it shook violently and the ground cracked. Crack, crack, bang. Countless pieces of flaming vines flew up from the ground and landed on the ground with a bang. The surrounding mountain walls also spat out these terrifying blood-red vines. Without exception, they were all destroyed by Li Zongjio. The originally scorching hot valley seemed to have become even hotter at this moment. Su Mo just stood there and watched Li Zongjio's actions in shock. It should be out soon. Li Zongjio said indifferently. What's out soon? Su Mo couldn't help but be stunned. What is Li Zongjio talking about? Could it be that there are some meta beasts here? Su Mo also saw that Li Zongjio seemed to be holding something in his hand. It was as thin as a cicada's wing. When he saw it, it was actually a little dazzling and he couldn't see it clearly. Li Zongjio stood calmly in the middle of the road. In front of him, there were already potholes and it seemed to have become a ruin. At this moment, Su Mo even felt that the surrounding air seemed to have grown eyes. In an instant, a chill struck his heart. It was as if someone was secretly spying on him. How could this be? Then, Su Mo saw an extremely shocking scene. The mountain walls on both sides of the messy skeletons were falling off like tree bark, little by little. What was hidden in the mountain walls were terrifying blood-colored vines. There were so many vines that were continuously twisting around like a group of giant snakes that had stood up. As they swayed, it was extremely dazzling. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would definitely not faint immediately. This was because this scene was indeed too frightening. Such a scene was simply like a nightmare in one's life. If one was entangled by these vines, who knew what would happen to them? Should we retreat first? Even Su Mo lost his confidence. It turned out that there was such a terrifying thing in the chaotic stone valley. No wonder the commander had ordered that this place be turned into a forbidden area. No one was allowed to enter. As for the prisoners who were exiled here, of course, there was no way for them to leave this place alive. They had already died here and became a pile of white bones. It was obvious how miserable their fates were. Li Zongjio didn't answer. Instead, he was still focused in front of him, as if something would appear in front of him. Su Mo was anxious, but he could only stay by Li Zongjio's side to protect him. If he directly ran away, it would be too disloyal. Rumble. Suddenly, the blood-colored vines seemed to carry the force of a thunderbolt, crushing towards the two of them. In front of them, 4 vines twisted and turned into a huge vine circle, rolling towards the two of them. If they didn't dodge quickly, they would definitely be crushed by these vines. In front of these terrifying vines, any kind of power would seem so insignificant. Su Mo looked at Li Zongjio with an indifferent face. What is this guy trying to do? Why is he still unwilling to leave? Over there. Li Zongjio's eyes instantly locked onto a place. The vast flying knife in his hand was also thrown out. Swish. The flying knife left his hand as if it was effortless. But when Su Emo saw this scene, he quickly moved in front of Li Zongjio. He didn't know what Li Zongjio's flying knife was for. The other party's attack would definitely crush him. The trajectory of Li Zongjio's flying knife was unclear, but Li Zongjio could clearly feel that this flying knife had cut through the vines that were blocking it. It easily pierced through the middle of a lotus's root. Phew! Su Emo was already prepared to attack, but he saw that the blood-colored vines that were about to crush his head had suddenly disappeared. What? When Su Emo saw this scene, he was shocked. Could it be that he was hallucinating? Did I see wrongly? Su Emo didn't dare believe it. He was an origin ancestor. Could his eyes be blind? Even if his eyes were blind, the aura was exactly the same. Su Emo looked at Li Zongjio, wanting to ask what was going on. However, he saw Li Zongjio lift his finger and flick her forehead. Wake up, Pa. Su Emo only felt that his body seemed to be moving backwards rapidly. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but take a few steps back before he stabilized himself. When he looked again, he realized that there was no change in his surroundings. There was no broken valley or terrifying blood-colored vines. How is this possible? He looked in the direction that Li Zongjio was heading. Su Emo saw a pure white lotus growing under a rock about 200 meters away. There was also a flying knife on the lotus. Everything that had just happened had been an illusion. Chapter 352. Su Emo was drenched in cold sweat even though she had come to her senses later on. If the blood vine ring had attacked them, the two of them would have been pulverized. Even if it was just an illusion, they would have already felt that they had been pulverized. Even if their bodies had not been attacked, they would not have been able to get up. You won't be able to rise again, and you'll really die like this. Su Emo could not believe it. As a member of the Vermilion Bird military, she believed that her willpower was extremely strong. It would not have been easy to hypnotize her. However, she did not even know when she had been hypnotized. For people with weaker mind power, this was just a small trick. However, it was very easy to succeed in such a small trick. Li Zongjio cultivated the white god Fu. When he took his first step into the chaotic stone valley, he already knew that the blazing white lotus in the chaotic stone valley was a type of spirit medicine that could release a spiritual influence. Although the other party's mental influence was very strong, Li Zongjio had seen through it at a glance. He had spent a lot of time searching for the real body. After he had found it, he had acted decisively and destroyed the other party's illusion. Li Zongjio stepped forward and plucked the blazing blood-white lotus. At the same time, he retrieved his vast flying dagger. Since it was ranked first, it was obvious that the power of this spiritual herb was not simple. I did not expect that such a small thing would cause our Vermilion Bird military to lose so many soldiers. Even Su Emo was in disbelief when she saw it. The mental influence of this flower is very strong. Anyone below the Yuan Monarch level will be affected by it. Even if you retreat immediately, there will still be repercussions later on. This thing is not to be trifled with. Li Zongjio said. The repercussions were like continuing to have nightmares after returning. It would make one nervous and might even destroy one's cultivation base and make one's mind unstable. It would also have a great impact on one's future cultivation. I see. Su Emo nodded. After the flower was plucked, the pressure that had originally appeared in the surroundings seemed to have disappeared at this moment. It seemed that this chaotic stone valley was no longer a strange place. Looks like you will have to report this to the higher-ups when you return this time around. Otherwise, if you continue to banish that criminal here, it would be equivalent to letting him go. Are there any other strange places on the blazing blood mountain? Li Zongjio asked. Strange places? This place is strange everywhere, but if it's as strange as you said, then only the core valley can satisfy your needs. Core valley? Li Zongjio frowned. That's right. Legend has it that the blazing blood mountain was formed by a meteorite that fell from the sky. The temperature produced in the core valley is so high that even Yuan monarchs would find it difficult to mature. Therefore, very few people can enter it. Furthermore, in the core of the valley, there is an exotic beast that is covered in flames. It seems to be guarding something. The dynasty had once organized an attack, but they returned in defeat and did not discover anything. If you want to go, I advise you not to go, Suemo said. Lead the way, Li Zongjio said directly. Suemo looked at Li Zongjio in astonishment. What was wrong with this guy's brain? Didn't he already say that this place was not a place where ordinary people could enter? Even Yuan monarchs might be in danger, yet Li Zongjio still wanted to go? Wasn't he courting death? You have thought it through. Let's go. Li Zongjio walked out of the stone valley. Suemo did not know if he was harming Li Zongjio or helping Li Zongjio. The reason he told Li Zongjio about this was because Sumo's personality was like that. He would speak his mind. When the two of them appeared in front of Iron Pestle was still in disbelief. You came out so quickly? Is there nothing inside? Or is it too dangerous? Should we just leave? Tai Pestle asked curiously. In comparison, he was more interested in knowing what was inside the stone valley. Everyone was curious about it. Let's go to the core valley. Suemo did not answer Iron Pestle. After all, this fellow's brain was as stiff as a block of iron. Even if he were to tell him, he would only laugh and treat it as a joke. Where are we going? Iron Pestle could not react to Sumo's words. Where was he talking about? Could it be that he had heard wrongly? The core valley. He wants to take a look. After saying that, Suemo looked at Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio gestured for Iron Pestle to lead the way with his eyes. Iron Pestle was more familiar with the core valley. When they were planning the attack on the core valley, Iron Pestle was one of the soldiers in charge of guarding the core valley. After all, Iron Pestle had been a soldier longer than Suemo. People will die in that place. Ordinary people can't withstand the temperature. Iron Pestle said hurriedly. Just lead the way. You talk too much, Suemo said. Hearing Sumo's words, Iron Pestle led the way. However, as they walked, he could not help bragging. After all, Iron Pestle had seen the battle in the core valley with his own eyes. Speaking of the core valley, I have to tell you guys about the situation back then. At that time, the meteorite landed outside the imperial city. How can you not be nervous? How can you not be nervous? How can you not be nervous? You directly mobilized 2 of the 4 great armies to provide support. Moreover, there were also countless experts who wanted to squeeze in from within the city. In that battle, I actually only saw a little bit. Within the flames, there are very ferocious monsters. Brotherly, if you want to go, you must be careful. Iron Pestle said. Let me tell you, my brain was damaged at that time. When Iron Pestle said that, even Li Zongjio could not help but glance at him. So you know that your brain was damaged. On the incandescent mountain, Ling Yan's figure was floating in the air. There was a water curtain around his body to protect him. With this water curtain, he could resist the terrifying power of the surrounding flames. Therefore, Ling Yan could walk freely on the incandescent mountain. He believed that many people had similar yuan tools. Even if they did not have one, it would not be a problem to buy one in advance. That's strange. That kid is gone? Ling Yan found that he could not sense Li Zongjio's aura. As a teacher in charge, he also needed to ensure the safety of the students in such an outdoor activity. This was also the responsibility of a teacher in charge. If his students died or had an accident, it would be a waste of talent. Sometimes, if he could help, of course, he would help. Therefore, Ling Yan also left a mark on the 2 of them. Less than a day had passed. Of course, he had to check if the 2 of them were still alive. Originally, he wanted to find Li Zongjio first, but when he took out the mark. However, he discovered that the mark on Li Zongjio's body had already disappeared. There was no trace of it at all. This caused Ling Yan to be instantly enraged. However, Li Zongjio also had a higher opinion of him. This kid is quite sinister. I'm afraid that my students are too upright. What if they get bullied? Ling Yan naturally knew that Li Zongjio had discovered the imprint that he had left on Li Zongjio's body. Furthermore, Li Zongjio had already removed the imprint at an unknown time. Let's go check on that Kuan Erasure guy first. Immediately, Ling Yan chased after Kuan Erasure. However, when Ling Yan followed his mark to find Kuan Erasure, he found that Kuan Erasure was not there. Instead, he was left on a lizard's body. Damn it. You two really think that you are very smart. Ling Yen grabbed the lizard and then fiercely threw it on the ground. His face bloomed with a fierce light. He could not wait to grab the two of them and eat them. Originally, as a form teacher, he was confident that he could discipline the two of them until they were obedient. But now, the two of them actually dared to play tricks in front of him. They used such a method to avoid his surveillance. But I want to see how capable the two of you are. Ling Yen, who was furious, returned to the campsite. He did not care about the two of them. On the incandescent mountain, as the three of them approached, even with their cultivation, they could already feel the unbearable heat. Even Tai Hua had to take a heat avoidance pill to be able to bring the two of them forward. Another 500 meters and you will see a cave entrance. That cave is deep underground. That cave is very big. But once you enter that cave, you may be attacked by the strange beasts inside. Tai Hua pointed forward and said in a deep voice, "You two go back." Li Zhongjio already knew the route. The surroundings were indeed very hot. Even Li Zhongjio had to release his yuan power to protect his body. Fortunately, the obsidian flame was able to subdue the surrounding flames. Therefore, Li Zhongjio was still able to move freely. However, the two of them seemed to be crippled as they kept drinking water. Chapter 353. If we leave, will you be able to do it alone? Tai Chiu scratched his head. Looking at Li Zhongjio, he couldn't help but feel worried. Li Zhongjio was his savior, so he couldn't just watch Li Zhongjio die. Li Zhongjio didn't answer such a stupid question. On the other hand, Su Mo was well aware that even if he followed Li Zhongjio in, he would only be a burden. Not only would he not be of any help to Li Zhongjio, but he would also restrict Li Zhongjio's movements. We'll wait for you outside the cave. If anything happens, release this signal flare. With that, Su Mo gave his signal flare to Li Zhongjio. This was a signal flare that only the Vermilion Bird Army had. If it was released, the Vermilion Bird Army within 100 miles would quickly come to help, and their numbers would increase. Every single member of the Vermilion Bird Army was a very important member, so no matter who was in danger, they would try to save them in the shortest amount of time possible to ensure the safety of their comrades. It was because of this spirit that the Vermilion Bird Army became an army that caused people to tremble in fear. Li Zhongjio originally wanted to refuse. He wouldn't use this thing, but when he saw Su Mo's expression, he reached out and took it. His body flashed as he charged inside. It's better if you guys back off a bit. Otherwise, you won't be able to last long. With the surrounding temperature, the yuan energy in their bodies would be drained very quickly. If a powerful yuan beast appeared, they wouldn't even be able to escape. Take this yuan crystal back first, then gather the team members to cultivate. Don't waste time. Su Mo stuffed the polar rock snake's crystal into Tai Hua's hand. How can this be? It's such a precious thing. Tai Chiu shook his head. It was as if the yuan crystal was a hot stone. Take it. Don't hesitate. Hurry up and go. This is an order. Su Mo's expression became serious. When he gave the order, Tai Chiu immediately stood up straight. Yes, Captain. Despite his reluctance, he had no other choice. He didn't dare to disobey a military order. As a soldier, his duty was to obey orders. If he couldn't, then what kind of soldier would he be? Seeing Tai Chiu leave, Su Mo was relieved. If Li Zhongjio didn't come out in 2 days, then Su Mo would risk his life to charge in. That way, he would be able to repay Li Zhongjio for saving his life. After retreating a few hundred meters, Su Mo sat down and started meditating. He began to enter into a state of cultivation. Previously in the Stone Valley, he had exhausted almost all of his mental energy and had gone through a life and death battle. Now that he was here, he finally had a chance to rest. Naturally, he had to adjust his mental state. At the same time, if Li Zhongjio encountered any trouble inside, Su Mo would be able to rush over in time. It's up to you now. Although this core area was full of dangers and even Yuan monarchs wouldn't dare to step into it, Su Mo could tell from Li Zhongjio's eyes that he was a very powerful person. Perhaps Li Zhongjio would be able to explore it smoothly and come out. Su Mo had confidence in Li Zhongjio. He didn't know where this confidence came from. When Li Zongjio walked in alone, he immediately had a feeling that the energy here was familiar. It was as if he had seen and felt this energy somewhere before. This made Li Zongjio extremely curious. This blazing energy, could this be the birthplace of the fire-glazed flame emperor in my previous life? Before Li Zongjio had become a supreme-grade powerhouse, there had been several generations of powerhouses on the continent. If the current powerhouses of the continent, such as the Alchemy Emperor and the Alchemy Emperor, were considered the first generation of powerhouses, then the fire-glazed flame emperor would be the second generation of powerhouses. Therefore, Li Zongjio had also come to this place. In the next few hundred years, this place would produce an Yuan monarch powerhouse. However, it was a pity. Now that Li Zongjio was here, there was no need to hand over such a great opportunity. Although Li Zongjio had greater opportunities and greater powers, this power was still very suitable for Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio's current power was still very suitable for Li Zongjio. The strength of the fire-glazed flame emperor relied on the terrifying inextinguishable flames. Inextinguishable flame, that's right. Then it seems that the inextinguishable flame's kindling came from here. Li Zongjio finally felt the origin of this energy. Moreover, he could clearly feel the power of the pulsating energy around him. In his previous life, Li Zongjio had also seen the strength of the fire-glazed flame emperor. At that time, it was a true world conference. Powerhouses from all over the world had gathered, and each of them wanted to reach the peak. At that time, Li Zongjio was just a small fry. He was not famous, but he had seen the strength of the fire-glazed flame emperor. He had killed his way to the 10th place of the heavenly tripod list alone. At that time, the fire-glazed flame emperor had yet to reach the peak of his strength. Later on, his strength continued to increase. However, the fire-glazed flame emperor's self-confidence was inflated with the growth of his strength. He actually dared to take liberties with a girl from an ancient family, which resulted in his hands being crippled. After that, there was no news of him anymore. A powerhouse of his generation had fallen. At that time, it was about 1,000 years. It was the peak period of the ancient families of inheritance. Some ancient families had appeared one after another, fighting for the world's resources. To expand their influence, it was as if all of them had discussed it. At the same time, like bamboo shoots after the rain, they had sprung up. At that time, all the major forces could be said to be in a state where 100 flowers bloomed. The appearance of the fire-glazed flame emperor was just a flash in the pan. However, the energy attribute of this place was the same as the fire-glazed flame emperor's. Li Zongjio liked it very much. If the immortal flame fuses with my obsidian flame, I wonder what it will be like. Li Zongjio walked into the cave. Before he entered, he had already found some spiritual herbs growing at the side of the cave. As he walked closer, he found that these herbs were all the things that were marked on the herbal medicine booklet. These things are called iron rock mushrooms? Li Zongjio saw a large number of mushrooms curled up here. It seemed that this place was very suitable for them to grow. Therefore all of them were here. This gave Li Zongjio a chance to harvest them. All of them were harvested. After harvesting the iron rock mushrooms, he continued to walk forward and found some new spiritual herbs on the ground. Magma grass, bull's tongue flower. Li Zongjio's hands moved up and down, and the knife moved up and down, and the precious herbs were all stored away. Li Zongjio did not let go of anything that had some spiritual energy. Suddenly, Li Zongjio stepped on a stone. The stone was slightly hot. Li Zongjio had activated his elemental energy to protect himself, but it was still able to burn Li Zongjio. This made Li Zongjio curious. He picked up the stone at his feet and carefully observed it. It's a fire elemental primordial stone. Li Zongjio's eyes lit up. Ordinary primordial stones had no elemental attributes. They were merely formed from yuan qi and could be used by anyone. However, primordial stones with elemental attributes were even more valuable. Usually, it would take 100 ordinary primordial stones to exchange for one primordial stone with fire elemental attributes. This was because for those who possessed fire elemental energy, this kind of primordial stone was definitely very precious and highly sought after. Keep it. These people's love for primordial stones was no less than a powerful primordial weapon. This was because if one absorbed primordial stones with elemental energy for a long time, it would definitely improve one's own elemental energy. It might even become stronger. Absorbing primordial stones with elemental attributes would definitely bring about more benefits. Just as Li Zongjio was about to pick up the primordial stone, suddenly he felt as if someone was breathing behind him. At this moment he stopped and turned around to look. Immediately he saw a pair of bright eyes looking at him from within the pitch-black cave. The moment that person looked at him, an ominous glint burned in his eyes. Boom! A figure pounced towards Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio was unable to dodge in time and was directly thrown into the cave by the figure, rolling deep into the cave. Chapter 354. Although Li Zongjio couldn't see the other party's face clearly, he could feel what the other party was doing. Suddenly, it opened its bloody mouth and bit down on Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio dodged in an instant. He extended his hand and grabbed the other party's throat. The moment he grabbed it, Li Zongjio crushed the other party's throat without any hesitation. After a crisp sound, the pair of claws that grabbed Li Zongjio lost their strength. It's just a fire wolf. Li Zongjio's fingertip burned with a ray of light. Under the illumination of the light, a wolf corpse fell to the ground. Although its throat was crushed, its heart was still beating non-stop. This fire wolf brought Li Zongjio to a place. Li Zongjio stood up and looked around. This place seemed to be a huge pit. It was surrounded by tall walls. However, he could see that there were some gaps in the walls. I'd like to see if there's anything that can stop me. Li Zongjio flicked his finger and a ray of flame floated in the air. It directly illuminated the surrounding light. Boom! When Li Zongjio saw the things around him, his mouth opened wide. He almost blurted out a curse. This was too much. The place where Li Zongjio was at was like the center of a meta-beast's lair. What he was stepping on was the excrement of the meta-beasts. The meta-beasts that were entrenched on the walls heard the commotion. Or rather, they had already sensed the commotion. They crawled out one after another. There were all kinds of meta-beasts. There were some giant lizards, some giant frogs, and the like. However, without exception, when they were angry, they would emit flames all over their bodies. Boom! Dozens of flames immediately lit up. Within the cave, even without the illumination of Li Zongjio's flames, everyone could see everything clearly. The balls of flames continued to light up. The power that kept appearing attracted Li Zongjio's attention. He looked around and saw that there were hundreds of balls of light that lit up. Come on, it's going to be a fierce battle. Li Zongjio took out his lightning hammer without hesitation. If one wanted to obtain a treasure, one had to go through a trial. This was a principle since ancient times. Li Zongjio was very clear about this concept. As he experienced more, Li Zongjio was more convinced of this theory. In this world, there was no free lunch. One had to go through hardships in order to improve. The surrounding meta-beasts with flames charged towards Li Zongjio. The aura that came tearing through the wind, in addition to his own terrifying strength, also caused Li Zongjio to roar along with it. As a dignified evil lord, could it be that he would be beaten down by these flaming meta-beasts? He swung the lightning hammer in his hand crazily and soared into the sky. Swoosh! Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, due to their large size, they were able to restrict each other. When Li Zongjio's body moved, it was possible for him to fight one against one or even one against two. Boom! Boom! The lightning hammer smashed down. When it landed on the ground, it exploded with terrifying power. Although these meta-beasts were ferocious, their ferocious aura was like that of a child's when compared to Li Zongjio. They couldn't scare Li Zongjio at all. However, when Li Zongjio heard these fellows roaring even though they were clearly no match for him, Li Zongjio felt extremely irritated. Shut up all of you! The blood dragon original spirit burst out from his body instantly. Boom! Li Zongjio's eyes were red. In addition to the aura that lingered around his body, the terrifying blood dragon was just like a king of the blood clan, overlooking the world. When this aura was unleashed, it immediately caused the surrounding Yuan beasts to become unusually quiet. All of them widened their eyes and looked at the blood dragon that was floating above Li Zhongjiu's head. At this moment, even though they were meta beasts that only knew how to kill, they could clearly feel the pressure from the blood dragon. Die! Li Zhongjiu didn't hold back. Obviously, these meta beasts were frightened and their fighting power decreased. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu swung his hammer down. Boom! Boom! The mysterious lightning hammer continued to descend, smashing the brains of some of the meta beasts. Li Zhongjiu was fast, accurate, and ruthless. Phew! In an instant, blood splattered on the battlefield and flames flew everywhere. This battle lasted for almost 20 minutes. Li Zhongjiu, who had the support of the blood dragon, was like a herd of sheep waiting to be slaughtered when facing these meta beasts. He took them down easily. That's all there is to it. Li Zhongjiu looked at the corpses that were all over the ground. Some of the meta beasts' bodies were still twitching. Li Zhongjiu went forward again and swung his hammer down, directly blasting their brains apart. His mental strength turned into a sharp knife and instantly took out the meta crystals of these hundreds of meta beasts. These meta beasts were just ordinary wild beasts before. However, under the catalysis of this energy, they actually formed such power. They even gave birth to the power of meta crystals in their bodies. Li Zhongjiu looked at the power of the meta crystals floating in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. It seemed like the energy here was very suitable for Li Zhongjiu. However, the surroundings were pitch black and he couldn't find the existence of any energy. However, Li Zhongjiu was very experienced in finding treasures. Thus, he was able to determine with a single glance that if there was something here, it would be extremely difficult to detect. The first thing he had to do was to destroy everything in front of him. Swoosh! Li Zhongjiu jumped onto the flat ground. Who would have thought that Li Zhongjiu would actually kill so many meta beasts in this cesspool? No one would believe it. However, the blood on his body had already covered Li Zhongjiu's aura. Behind this wall, there is a destructive aura. Li Zhongjiu held the mysterious lightning hammer and looked at the wall in front of him. Those meta beasts had crawled out from this wall. Therefore, most of the energy that they had absorbed came from this wall. If there was any danger in the core area, it definitely wasn't these meta beasts. Any Yuan King level elite with some equipment would be able to kill all these meta beasts. They were not a threat at all. The real threat was behind this wall. Go! Li Zhongjiu channeled his Yuan power and threw the mysterious lightning hammer in his hand out with all his might. Boom! The mysterious lightning hammer hit the wall and a terrifying force surged into the wall. With the mysterious lightning hammer as the starting point, cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. There was a loud bang. The entire wall collapsed instantly. Li Zhongjiu's eyes widened and he gasped when he saw what was in front of him. Su Mo was outside the cave. Although he was very far away, he could still hear the roar coming from the cave. Li Zhongjiu seemed to be in the middle of a fierce battle. Su Mo wanted to go in and take a look. However, the aura in the cave wasn't suitable for Su Mo to go near. He didn't know what would happen if he tried to force his way in. At the very least, his meridians would be burned when he channeled his Yuan power. Damn it! Su Mo heard the loud bang and saw a huge cloud of dust spurt out from the cave. He stomped his foot and rushed forward. Who asked me to owe you? Damn it! Chapter 355. It appeared in front of Li Zhongjiu. It was a huge flame flower surrounded by flames. The flames dancing on the petals were terrifying. It was as if there was a fire dragon roaring and burning under each flame. Such a situation caused Li Zhongjiu to be extremely shocked in his heart. How did the fire glaze flame emperor do it? This is the eternal fire glaze flower. Li Zhongjiu was shocked. The eternal fire glaze flower. Wasn't that the original spirit of the fire glaze flame emperor? Although most people's primordial spirits were refined from primordial beasts, if some plants had cultivated for many years and possessed terrifying strength and primordial chi, they could naturally become primordial spirits and be absorbed. It was like a 1,000-year-old water lily. It was a plant, not a primordial beast. So the fire glaze flame emperor refined the eternal fire glaze flower. Just by looking at the aura of this thing, one could tell that it was equivalent to a true Yuan king. Even the indestructible fire glass flower had given birth to an indestructible flame seed. A fire seed and a spiritual herb. If the two were superimposed, it would be very terrifying and the effect would be obvious. If there was something hidden in the meteorite, then pudding was the fire seed of the eternal fire. It had fused with the eternal fire glaze flower, causing the eternal fire glaze flower to possess great power. In that case, the eternal fire glaze flower unexpectedly obtained the eternal fire seed and became something like an original spirit. With Li Zhongjio's cultivation level, he quickly figured out the reason for this. Everything in this world was so ingenious. One had to admit that coincidences were very important. Then let me see what you're capable of. Li Zhongjio held the vast flying dagger and strode forward. Above the eternal fire glass flower, a fiery light suddenly bloomed and rushed towards Li Zhongjio. With a gentle wave of the petals, a flame swept over. Boom! The flame rapidly flew over and landed beside Li Zhongjio, but Li Zhongjio had already rushed out. However, the violent explosion still caused a gust of wind and pushed Li Zhongjio away. Bang! Li Zhongjio fell to the ground. The eternal fire turned into a flaming whip and whipped towards Li Zhongjio. Crack! Li Zhongjio hurriedly dodged. There was a mark nearly half a foot deep where he had originally been. This was the power left behind by the everlasting fire. If he had been whipped, Li Zhongjio didn't know if his body would have been able to withstand it. Swoosh! Another long whip of the inextinguishable flame suddenly appeared. As the two fire whips intertwined, they directly sealed Li Zhongjio's figure within. Crack! Crack! Even though Li Zhongjio was able to dodge these attacks with his sharp senses, several of the flaming whips still landed on his body. Even in his current state, there was still a long black burn mark on his body. Li Zhongjio grimaced in pain. In such a hot environment, one's pain seemed to be magnified. Even Li Zhongjio could not help but cry out, "Are you the only one with fire? Your grandfather also has fire." A similar long whip appeared in Li Zhongjio's hand. It was formed by the obsidian flame. The black dragon soul was attached to the whip and seemed to faintly emit the power of the black dragon's roar. That was why the other party was intimidated. Otherwise, who knew what these guys would do? Pa! Li Zhongjio activated the obsidian flame whip and entangled his opponent's eternal fire whip. At the same time, Li Zhongjio took the opportunity to throw the vast flying dagger in his hand. Just as Li Zhongjio was about to make his move, a burst of energy suddenly attacked him from behind. Swoosh! As the wind howled, Li Zhongjio could already feel his body being constricted. Oh no, it's the guardian meta beast. Li Zhongjio had actually forgotten about it. The guardian of the eternal fire glass flower was a flaming snake. Therefore, when the flaming snake attacked, it used its powerful body to wrap around Li Zhongjio. Li Zhongjio was instantly trapped in the endless pressure and could not escape. The vast flying dagger was also swept away by the dozens of flame whips. With a few cracking sounds, the flame whips entangled the vast flying dagger and prevented it from moving forward. However, the power of the vast flying dagger was not so easily neutralized. In this process, the two parties were in a deadlock. Li Zhongjio! A shout came from the cave. Su Mo saw that Li Zhongjio was entangled by a pitch-black python. The strength of this python was obviously much stronger than Su Mo, but Su Mo did not show any fear. In an instant, he unleashed his strongest attack. Vermilion Bird Slash. Su Mo let out a low growl as he held his dagger in a reverse grip. With a swoosh, he charged forward and stabbed the sharp dagger into the python's body. Roar! Bang! The python let out a low roar, and its body, which was originally shrinking, instantly expanded. At the same time, it fiercely swung its tail, sending Su Mo flying. Su Mo crashed into the mountain wall and fell to the ground with a plop. Su Mo directly fainted. You're courting death. Li Zhongjio naturally saw Su Mo's situation. Although Li Zhongjio did not approve of people of the same age, Su Mo was definitely an outstanding young man. He was simple and not pretentious. This kind of character was also appreciated by Li Zongjio, which was why he cooperated with Suemo. Otherwise, he would have shaken off these people long ago. Could it be that Li Zongjio alone could not find this place? After his rebirth, Li Zongjio also needed some friends. He didn't want to live with the mentality of an old man. If that was the case, wouldn't it be very meaningless? The youth that he had once wasted, now he had the ability to pick it up again. The more he saw, the more he appreciated people like Sumo's character. Suemo could not have withstood the attack just now. He must have been seriously injured. Therefore, Li Zongjio's eyes were burning with a fierce light. You are courting death. At this moment, the blood dragon original spirit did not need to be mobilized at all. It directly appeared under Li Zongjio's feet and dragged Li Zongjio's body into the air. It looked down at the pitch-black python in front of it. This python had been entrenched in this place for several years. Seeing that the eternal fire glass flower was about to mature, it was naturally excited. However, when it woke up today, it discovered that someone was coveting the treasure it had set its eyes on. Naturally, it could not let it go. Chi! The black python roared at Li Zongjio, wanting to tell Li Zongjio that it was not afraid. However, Li Zongjio stretched out his hand and the thunder Shen hammer appeared in his hand. The obsidian fire curled up and Li Zongjio's body suddenly fell toward the black python. The blood dragon original spirit under his feet easily tore apart the other party's aura. Boom! The blood claw suddenly pierced the black python's body and restrained it. The black python seemed to know how powerful this blood dragon's soul was after it restrained the latter. At this moment, the only thing that could move was its tail. It suddenly rose up, brushed against the top of the mountain wall, and fell directly toward Li Zongjio. Boom! Li Zongjio raised one hand. This attack that was enough to destroy a mountain peak could not move an inch in the hands of Li Zongjio. It had no power at all. In front of Li Zongjio, this move seemed to be completely ineffective. A golden light was reflected in the python's pupils. With its intelligence, it naturally knew that it was going to be unlucky. The power that suddenly attacked was a golden light shadow. The golden dragon original spirit. Li Zongjio blocked the tail attack with one hand and caught the tail attack. It was the power of the golden dragon original spirit that worked. At this moment, the golden dragon original spirit also opened its bloody mouth and bit the tail. You have a king bloodline, but unfortunately, you have provoked someone you should not have provoked. The two original spirits by Li Zongjio's side directly pressed him and the black python to the ground, making the latter unable to move. Upon seeing this, the black python immediately submitted to Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio ignored it. Obsidian flames lingered on the mysterious lightning hammer in his hand. Boom! A terrifying black flame fell and burned the body of the black python clean like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. The latter was already at the peak of the Fourth Order realm. It was equivalent to a peak Sky Origin Ancestor realm powerhouse, but in front of Li Zongjio, it still did not have the slightest ability to fight back. It was easily killed. Ding! A pitch-black yuan crystal fell on the ground, emitting light in the cave like a black diamond. Vast flying knife. At this moment, the flying knife was surrounded by the everlasting flame. The everlasting flame array seemed to be about to melt the vast flying knife, but unfortunately, Li Zongjio's flying knife was also forged from the meteorite. Break! A thought passed through Lin Dong's mind and a frightening strength immediately spread out from the vast flying knife. Mental energy also shot out like a fan that was extinguishing flames. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the flame on the everlasting flame glass flower was extinguished. At the same time, the flying knife also easily cut off the root of the everlasting flame glass flower. Seeing that the spirituality of the everlasting flame glass flower was about to disappear, Li Zongjio did not let its vitality fade away. It's not that easy to die. Mental strength wrapped around this power, and then Li Zongjio helped Suemo up. Chapter 356. Just now, Li Zongjio's mental power had been paying attention to Sumo's condition. The black python's tail flick attack. It had directly caused the elemental bead in Sumo's body to collapse. Therefore, Li Zongjio was so furious that he had touched the elemental bead. For a cultivator, it was as good as ending her life. It had even threatened Sumo's life. Either Sumo woke up and found that she had lost all her cultivation, or she could only die with serious injuries. Regardless of the outcome, Li Zongjio was unwilling to see it. After all, Sumo had rushed out to save him. Even though she knew that she was no match for Li Zongjio, she still insisted on rushing forward and saving him. Just this kindness alone was something that Li Zongjio would have to repay for a long time. There was no such thing as a life-saving grace being cancelled out. After all, if it wasn't for her help, there wouldn't be this person anymore. Fortunately, this girl hasn't condensed her elemental soul. Li Zongjio withdrew his spiritual power and pushed a surge of elemental energy into Sumo's body, helping Sumo support this surge of energy. At the very least, she could maintain her last breath and not die. But in fact, Sumo was almost done. Under such serious injuries, her life force was rapidly draining away. Use the inextinguishable fire to reconstruct the elemental bead. Inextinguishable fiery glass flower, become her elemental soul. Li Zongjio's enormous willpower instantly poured into the elemental soul of the inextinguishable fiery glass flower. A ball of light condensed in his hand and turned into a small halo. Inextinguishable fire seed. Li Zongjio then extracted the inextinguishable fire seed from the fiery glass flower's body. Such a supreme treasure was something that ordinary people yearned for greatly. In fact, for the sake of this inextinguishable fire seed, they would even kill everyone who fought for it. Li Zongjio had seen plenty of such situations. However, Li Zongjio had seen a lot of treasures before. Although the eternal flame seed was a very strong source of energy, he was willing to sacrifice it for Sumo's loyalty. First, he fed the inextinguishable flame seed into Sumo's mouth. At the same time, he also injected the original soul of the fire glass flower into Sumo's body. Sumo, who was unconscious, could only feel a wave of scorching hot energy rushing into his body. The pain of the flame invading his body caused Sumo to furrow his eyebrows. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. White Dragon Origin Spirit. Li Zongjio summoned the White Dragon Origin Spirit. With the auxiliary attribute of the White Dragon Primordial Spirit, he strengthened his spiritual power and then forcibly helped Sumo refine the inextinguishable fire seed in his body. The inextinguishable fire seed quietly merged into Sumo's origin bead. The cracks on the origin bead were also repaired by the terrifying inextinguishable fire seed. This terrifying power also caused the origin bead in Sumo's body to quickly revolve. Luckily, it's of the same attribute. If it's of different attributes, then even if I'm here, it would be useless. When Li Zongjio thought of this, he felt some lingering fear. If Sumo's body couldn't hold on for so long, then wouldn't he be blind? In such a short period of time, there wasn't even enough time to refine pills. Even Li Zongjio had times when he was helpless. Luckily, Sumo came from the Vermilion Bird Army. If he wanted to join the Vermilion Bird Army, he had to ensure that his origin energy was of the fire attribute. Otherwise, he wouldn't accept anyone. In order to ensure the integrity and unity of the Vermilion Bird Army. When this concentrated power reached a certain level, it could cause a qualitative change. With Li Zongjio's strength, he only needed to get through this dangerous period before he could stabilize. Sumo's mental energy was also continuously merging with the inextinguishable fire glass flower. This merging process was progressing very smoothly. After all, he was once a sovereign-level expert. If he could make a move, then he must have a foolproof treasure. This time, I've given you a great opportunity. When Li Zongjio completed the merging of the origin bead, he let out a sigh of relief. His head was covered in sweat. At this moment, 1.5 days had passed in the outside world. There was still half a day left until the deadline. It was almost dark now. When the sun rose tomorrow, this trial would be considered to have ended. For that opportunity, Li Zongjio had to collect some of the herbs. He had to win. Sumo opened his eyes and woke up from his coma. Su Mo didn't know what had happened to him, nor did he know what had happened to him. However, after waking up, he realized that his strength had increased by a lot. How could this be? Su Mo circulated his energy slightly and was shocked by the vigorous yuan power in his body. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could this be? My yuan power has broken through. This yuan power isn't my yuan power from before. It seems to be purer and more powerful. Feeling the changes in his body, Su Mo was both surprised and worried. Li Zongjio, you're awake. Su Mo recalled that he had gone to save Li Zongjio. However, he only had time to stab him once before he was knocked unconscious. He wasn't clear about what happened after that. Li Zongjio was holding some herbs in his hand. After confirming that Su Mo was fine, Li Zongjio began to wander around. Not only that, he accidentally found some extremely rare and precious herbs. They were all herbs from the herbal booklet. In fact, the eternal fireglass flower that Li Zongjio had obtained was even more valuable than these medicinal herbs. It was not even recorded in the medicinal herb booklet, so it should be considered a pleasant surprise. You're injured. You can feel your own strength now. Li Zongjio said. My strength? Didn't you notice that there's something extra in your body? Li Zongjio said indifferently. Inside my body. Just as Su Mo's mind moved, his body seemed to release a dazzling energy that slowly diffused into the surroundings. The energy that was released was the terrifying fire elemental energy. Such powerful fire elemental energy. He opened his palm and a ray of light was condensing. It was this thing that was hidden in Su Mo's body. When it appeared, Su Mo felt his strength increase greatly and he possessed an extremely terrifying power. When he saw the thing in his palm, Su Mo finally realized the changes in his body. Yuan spirit. Although Su Mo had broken through to the origin ancestor realm, he had yet to refine his Yuan spirit. Because he couldn't find a suitable primordial spirit, Su Mo couldn't beat some powerful primordial spirits, and primordial spirits that were too weak would be a great waste for Su Mo. To be able to become a captain of the Vermilion Bird Army at such a young age was already proof of his talent. This is the eternal fire glass flower. There's an eternal fire seed in your body. This eternal fire seed and this fire glass flower are enough for you to cultivate to the origin emperor realm. It's at least equivalent to a grade 6 yuan beast. It's just right for you. Li Zongjio said. Although Li Zongjio's words were calm and ordinary, as if there was nothing to be surprised about, to Su Mo, it was like a thunderclap exploding in his ears. Su Mo was dumbfounded. How is this possible? This is a grade 6 yuan spirit. Damn. Although the last word was said very softly, Li Zongjio could still hear it clearly. It's just a grade 6 yuan spirit. It's still up to your potential to what extent it can be used. Li Zongjio said. Although the yuan spirit was powerful, it had to have a tacit understanding with one's body. Only then could the two combine and become an expert. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste to have a treasure mountain but not know how to use it? How could this be? This is all because of you. It's not me. It's your luck that's good. Otherwise, you would be dead by now. Li Zongjio interrupted Su Mo's words and paused for a moment before looking at the latter seriously. Next time, if you know you can't win, don't rush up. It's useless. Looking at how serious Li Zongjio was, she didn't know if he was concerned about her or making fun of her. But he shouldn't be making fun of her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have saved her. I didn't expect you to save my life again. Su Mo will never forget. If you have any problems in the future, Su Mo, will never decline. Su Mo looked at Li Zongjio's eyes and said. For eyes met, and the atmosphere in the air became a little unusual. Everyone, I said that this place isn't dangerous. It's just that the Vermilion Bird Army is controlling it and doesn't want others to find it. I can guarantee that there are many precious herbs inside. Chapter 357. Footsteps could be heard coming from outside the cave. When Li Zongjio first heard the voice, he found it familiar. However, he quickly recalled who it was. You just broke through. Go and practice. Li Zongjio said to Su Emo. What? Su Emo was stunned. What practice? However, Su Emo also heard the sound coming from the cave. The two of them sat on the same spot, turned around, and looked in the direction of the cave. Someone's here. The few people who came in were shocked when they saw Li Zongjio and Su Emo. It was as if they were caught doing something wrong. Who's there? Due to the dim lighting and the fact that they were more vigilant, they quickly hid behind when there was a problem. They didn't want to reveal their heads. What if it was some extremely ferocious meta beast that suddenly jumped out to eat them? Therefore, these people were also very worried. Wait a minute. That person just now seemed a little familiar. One of them tried to recall. That figure, that appearance, he felt like he had seen it somewhere before. This kind of familiarity at a glance was definitely not wrong. If he had never seen it before, he would definitely not have such a sense of familiarity. Fuck, it's that brat. The few of them suddenly realized. Wasn't the person in the cave the arrogant freshman? The three of them looked at each other and nodded fiercely. There was an extremely sinister smile on their faces. The three of them walked in side by side. How could they let Li Zongjio escape with such a good opportunity? So it's you, brat. Weren't you very arrogant? Let's see where you can run to this time. Yo, I didn't expect you to come here with a little girl instead of looking for herbs. Ching Ching, I'm coming. Such a hot body. Junior sister, why don't you follow us? When they saw Su Mo's perfect body that was filled with a trace of wildness, these people's eyes were wide open. Especially after the breakthrough, Su Mo's body seemed to have become more prominent. This casual twist was a fatal attraction to ordinary people. Brat, you sure have good luck with women. The leader looked at Li Zongjio and then looked at Su Emo. Unlike his companions, he didn't reveal a perverted look. Idiot, even though there's no one else here, you're still damaging your image in front of the girls. As the boss, it's only natural for you to remain calm. The three people in front of him were the ones who had a conflict with Li Zongjio and Lan Shan on the sky-shaking ship. He was also in the A class of the Heavenly STEM faculty, but he was 1 year older than Li Zongjio and was in the 2nd grade. Haha, I don't know if I'm lucky or not, but I know that you won't be able to enjoy it today. Li Zongjio waved his hand casually, as if he had nothing to lose. No matter what you say, I'm here anyway. And I want to see how you're going to get beaten up and how you're going to die miserably. Seeing Li Zongjio's face that deserved a beating. The three of them did not wait any longer. Junior sister, you should hide at the side first. This matter has nothing to do with you, so I won't make things difficult for you. The leader of the group said very politely. He gave Su Emo a smile that he thought was very kind. It was as if he wanted to use this smile to conquer Su Emo. Su Emo also grinned at the three people in front of him. That brilliant smile instantly made everything around them lose its color. The three of them were almost captivated by this smile. However, in the next moment, the person at the back got a taste of what it meant to have his balls smashed to the ground. Su Mo's figure flashed and appeared beside the last person. Then, he directly grabbed his shoulder and threw him over his shoulder. Bang! When he fell to the ground, there just so happened to be a piece of rock stuck between his legs. Thus, the instant he fell to the ground, the pain he felt was simply indescribable. Ah! A squeal like a pig being slaughtered rang out. Li Zongjio calmly sat at the side and arranged the flowers in his hand. They had mistaken Su Emo for someone from the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Manor. How could there be such a fierce girl in the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Manor? Although one person was instantly defeated, the other two weren't simple either. When Su Emo made his move, they had already reacted. Junior sister, you asked for it. Since you dared to take the initiative to attack, then don't blame us for being impolite. The Heavenly Stellar Medicine Manor didn't only nurture an alchemist who knew how to refine pills, but also an alchemist with tenacious vitality. In addition, these people were all people with talent and conditions. Therefore, when they compared themselves to each other, the requirements for themselves would be higher. Therefore, alchemy alone wasn't enough to satisfy them. It wasn't enough for them to stand out from their peers. More importantly, they had to have powerful fighting strength. Boom! Boom! The two of them simultaneously released their auras. They had actually reached the origin ancestor realm. Furthermore, the yuan energy that lingered around their bodies was extremely powerful. It turned into flames that spread in the cave and even emitted crackling sounds. If you don't have any skills, do you think that the A class of the heavenly stem system is free? Li Zongjio was a little surprised, as the strength of the two of them had already reached the level 5 sky origin ancestor realm. It seemed like they were still hiding something. How could they have such achievements at such a young age? Furthermore, they usually like to cause trouble, so Li Zongjio guessed that it was all an act. When they really fought, they would know each other's strength. Don't use too much strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if you killed them, Li Zongjio told Su Mo. That person glanced at Li Zongjio with a sinister look in his eyes. You can show off now. Wait until I deal with this sexy junior sister, then I'll deal with you. Then you'll know what a sour feeling is. Junior sister, it's not too late for you to surrender now. I, Zhao Qingfeng, don't want to be enemies with you, junior sister. The leader of the group was called Zhao Qingfeng. At this moment, he wanted to persuade Su Mo to surrender. After all, they hadn't fought yet, so there was still room for negotiation. When the real fight started, it wouldn't be a game anymore. Idiot, Su Mo said coldly. Su Mo said coldly. His eyes were filled with mockery. However, the strength of these people still made Su Mo afraid. Although Su Mo knew that his yuan force had broken through, he didn't know exactly how much it had been. Before this, he had only been a third-grade origin ancestor. Thus, he couldn't help but be wary of two fifth-grade origin ancestor experts. However, he wasn't afraid. Instead, he had a very strong desire to fight these people before him, as if he wanted to challenge this level of difficulty. In an instant, Su Mo attacked, not holding back the terrifying yuan power in his body. Although Li Zongjio had said to hold back a little, it was fine as long as he didn't kill them. You overestimate yourself. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes flashed coldly. Since Su Mo didn't know what was good for him, then he couldn't blame him for being ruthless. There were beautiful women everywhere. Since Su Mo had chosen to attack, then he was an enemy. The three auras collided instantly. One could even faintly hear the roars of beasts. Clearly, the two people had also secretly used a trace of their yuan spirit power, wanting to suppress Su Mo. However, Su Mo wasn't intimidated by the other party's strength. Instead, she dealt with it with ease. Although the two people in front of him had strong yuan qi, their combat strength was too weak in comparison. It was almost weak to the point of no return. Trash. She didn't need to use 100% of her strength. It was only 70% of her strength, and she was already evenly matched with the two of them. 1 against 2, and she didn't even need to use her full strength. How is this possible? Zhao Qingfeng and Su Mo were shocked, but the movements of their hands didn't stop. How could this junior sister be so good at fighting? You dare to come out with just this bit of strength? Su Mo suddenly sped up, and her figure rushed in front of Zhao Qingfeng. Her entire body rose into the air, and her slender legs instantly clamped Zhao Qingfeng's waist. Not good. Zhao Qingfeng didn't have time to enjoy this luck. In the next second, he was ruthlessly thrown out by Su Mo. His head hit a rock with a bang. Chapter 358. Zhao Qingfeng was in pain this time. His head immediately swelled up, making him look like he was in extreme pain. The other person was in disbelief when he saw Zhao Qingfeng fall. However, in the next second, Su Mo also rushed towards him. The latter was so scared that he directly released the power of his yuan spirit. A volcanic giant ape appeared behind him, releasing a violent and ferocious power at the same time. It spread out in all directions. Boom! Su Mo was also pushed back by this move. His figure quickly swept back, and after taking a few small steps back, he stabilized himself. Behind that person was a red-haired gorilla, who was panting heavily. Its eyes were filled with a terrifying murderous intent, as though it wanted to crush Su Mo into pieces. What's that? Summoning his origin spirit meant that he had already lost in this competition. Facing his own junior sister, he actually had to use his origin spirit power. However, if he didn't use his origin spirit power, then he might have been crippled just now. It was safer to summon his origin spirit. Look, out of the 3 people present, 2 directly fell down. Fortunately, he was smarter. However, when he summoned his Yuan spirit, he also saw that there seemed to be a power released from his opponent's body. Although he couldn't see it clearly, it seemed to be a flower. He actually used a flower as his Yuan spirit. What a joke! There are actually people who use flowers as their primordial spirit. If you can't find a strong primordial beast for you to hunt, you can just tell me directly. But today I, your senior brother, am going to destroy this flower. This Yuan beast of mine is a true volcanic giant ape at the peak of the 4th rank. Although it hasn't reached adulthood yet, its power is definitely not something you people can resist. Peak of the 4th rank. It sounded very powerful. If it was before today, Su Mo would be shocked. Su Mo would have been shocked. But just now, Li Zongjio had told him that her primordial spirit was a terrifying existence comparable to a 6th rank primordial beast. It was simply a world of difference from this peak of the 4th rank in front of him. However, the difference was that Su Mo was in the sky. Su Mo's body was covered by the leaves of the eternal fireglass. At this moment, seeing the giant ape in front of him, he did not panic. Condense fire whip. A flame whip suddenly appeared in Su Mo's hand. There was a faint flame burning on it. It looked like it would be extinguished at any moment. It didn't even have any power to speak of. The senior brother wanted to ruthlessly teach Su Mo a lesson and let Su Mo know how powerful and domineering he was. For such a woman, the most important thing was to learn how to be conquered by men. First, he had to let her know how powerful he was. However, when he wanted to go up, his original soul, the giant volcanic ape, felt a burst of fear from the bottom of its heart. This kind of fear came from the bottom of its heart. It was actually terrified. You piece of trash, hurry up and attack. If you drop the ball at this time, do you believe that I won't let you out again? After being frightened by the senior brother, the giant volcanic ape roared furiously and charged forward. He swung his sandbag-sized fist, which was as thick as a tree trunk, towards Su Mo. At the same time, Su Mo also lashed out with his flaming whip. A whistling sound broke through the air. It didn't seem to have any power. Originally, the senior brother wanted to directly block it with his body. However, when it got close, a scalding and blazing feeling suddenly came. When the whip fell on his body, the giant volcanic ape reached out to grab the flaming whip. However, the moment he grabbed it, his entire palm and even his entire body burned. Oh my God, it's so hot, help. His body suddenly burned with a raging fire. Such a sudden burst of power simply made it impossible for people to react. How could this be? How could the flame rush to his body by itself? It was so terrifying. The senior brother wanted to activate his Yuan energy to extinguish the flame, but he found that it was impossible. Instead, as his Yuan energy erupted, the flame on his body became even more terrifying. Bang! Su Mo stepped forward and kicked the senior brother away. At the same time, he extinguished the flame. In just a short while, the senior brother was burned beyond recognition. It was extremely terrifying to look at. What an unlucky guy. What a strong extension power, just like the fire-glaze infernal emperor back then. Given enough time, Su Mo will become the new fire-glaze infernal emperor. Li Zongjio looked at the interesting scene in front of him. Everything was changing. It seemed that Li Zongjio's interference and changes had changed some of the specific trajectories. However, a new combination had been created. The famous fire-glazed Inferno Emperor was actually created by Li Zongjio. Just thinking about it was a bit inconceivable. Interesting. Li Zongjio sat there and smiled. This was the first time Su Mo saw Li Zongjio revealing such a smile. It seemed a little wretched. Li Zongjio, what are you thinking in your head? Su Mo couldn't help but say. Li Zongjio woke up with a start and coughed a few times to resolve the awkwardness in front of him. How could he be so immature? In any case, he was an old monster who had lived for 3,000 years. What was there to be surprised and happy about? He really hadn't seen the world. Cough cough. Nothing. Li Zongjio said. What should we do with these 3 people? Bury them? Su Emo looked at Li Zongjio. These 3 people had shown strong hostility towards Li Zongjio from the beginning. Since they were enemies, they couldn't let the tiger go back to the mountain. Naturally, they had to clean them up and ensure that there wouldn't be any trouble in the future. Why are you so ruthless? Li Zongjio looked at Su Emo. Why did this guy want to bury people so easily? It was too violent. Such an idea wasn't worth advocating. Then Li Zongjio stepped forward and took off all the storage rings on their bodies. There were many treasures in these storage rings. Most importantly, the medicinal herbs that they had painstakingly collected these days had all fallen into Li Zongjio's hands. It feels good to reap without sowing. Li Zongjio let out a long sigh. No wonder so many people wanted to eat and wait for death. This feeling was indeed very good. Zhao Qingfeng slowly woke up from his coma and found that only Li Zongjio and Su Emo were standing on the ground. Li Zongjio was holding his storage ring as if he was looking for something. My ring! Zhao Qingfeng immediately shouted after seeing it. But Li Zongjio directly kicked his face. Go to sleep. It's mine now. Chapter 359. Let's part here. I can't continue to send you off. Su Emo told Li Zongjio. Su Mo's troop was stationed in another area. The troop in charge of Heavenly Star Medicine Manor's expedition wasn't Su Mo's troop. Different troops had different areas of jurisdiction. If they rashly overstepped their boundaries, it would cause some misunderstandings. Alright, let's meet again if fate allows it. Li Zongjio cupped his fists at Su Emo. Su Emo possessed the inextinguishable flame seed in his body. Coupled with the protection of the fireglass flower, he would definitely be able to achieve great things in the Vermilion Bird military. This expedition to White Blaze Mountain might have seemed easy, but in reality, Su Emo would have died twice if Li Zongjio hadn't been present. Just counting the number of people who died, they had already died twice. If any other accidents had occurred, he might not have been able to walk out alive even if he had 10 lives. If Li Zongjio hadn't gotten rid of so many terrifying meta-beasts in the cave, the idiotic trio wouldn't have been able to enter. They would have probably been crippled by a large group of meta-beasts the moment they entered. Li Zongjio's bloody battle in the cave could be said to be the most desperate battle he had ever experienced since his rebirth. If it hadn't been for the thorough use of his origin energy and the power of his origin spirit, Li Zongjio might not have been able to get rid of these meta-beasts so easily. If it had been anyone else, even if it was a Yuan King-level powerhouse, they would have been defeated. There was a high chance that they would have died there. Therefore, it wasn't that this place wasn't dangerous, but that Li Zongjio was too strong. Li Zongjio took a casual inventory after plundering the spiritual herbs of the trio. He had found more than 100 stalks of high-quality spiritual herbs. It was clear that the trio's standard was pretty good. After all, these people were students of the Heavenly Horizon A course. If they didn't have any skills or specialties, it would have been really difficult for them to enter the Heavenly Horizon A course. The sky had just begun to darken. However, someone had already returned from the campsite. The person who returned was none other than Li Zongjio. Originally, Li Zongjio planned to use the rest of the time to search the surroundings and see if there were any precious medicinal herbs. However, the 3 fools directly delivered these herbs to him, so he didn't even need to look for them. Naturally, Li Zongjio wouldn't be so troublesome. If he had the time, he might as well cultivate. At this time, Li Zongjio's mind was only filled with cultivation. Cultivation made him happy. There was also the matter of the Yi clan. It seemed that after returning to the city, he would have to make a trip to Lone Moon's residence. This Yi Lone Moon was really arrogant. What kind of status did he have in society? He actually dared to give such an assassination order directly. He really didn't know what was good for him. Which class are you from? You're back so soon? A mentor saw Li Zongjio and suddenly widened his eyes. There was still a whole night's time, but he didn't speed up the search and instead came back early. It was obvious that he had given up on the competition. Li Zongjio? Why are you back so soon? At first, Ling Yan didn't dare to believe it. However, She had already felt a familiar aura from afar, so she walked out. When she saw Li Zongjio coming back, although she was surprised, she wasn't very surprised. It seemed that she had already expected this. Oh, I've already found the wrong one. Anyway, it's the first place. It doesn't matter if there are more or less. Li Zongjio said very calmly. Hearing Li Zongjio's words, some of the surrounding instructors couldn't help but laugh out loud. This brat was too arrogant, wasn't he? Ling Yan, is this the genius of your class? He really has a lot of potential. Hu Fei, my class's matters have nothing to do with you. Clearly, Ling Yan was very unhappy with the person who came out to laugh at her. Li Zongjio also felt that the somewhat young man in front of him was somewhat familiar. Wasn't he the class teacher of those 3 idiots? Although Hu Fei and Ling Yan were both mentors of this Sky STEM department's A class, their relationship wasn't very good. It was said that Hu Fei and Ling Yan had once dumped a close friend of Ling Yan's, so Ling Yan was very unhappy with Hu Fei. However, Hu Fei's strength was indeed very strong. It was also because of this that Hu Fei was specially allowed to stay in this school. However, whenever Ling Yan saw Hu Fei, she would never look at him with a good expression. Ling Yan, you're a class teacher now. You should watch your words. Otherwise, how can you be a teacher? Hu Fei glanced at Ling Yan indifferently. Then, his gaze very subtly landed on some of Ling Yan's key parts. Hu Fei was also very interested in such a hot-tempered little horse. He wanted to ride it and feel what it was like to ride it. When facing a girl with such a strong personality, he naturally couldn't use normal methods to deal with her. He had to use a special method. He had to purposely sing a different tune and make the other party hate him. Then, he would find an opportunity to make the other party change her view of him. These methods of chasing girls were too easy for Hu Fei. Whether I'm a teacher or not, it's none of your business. You should take care of yourself first. Ling Yan rolled her eyes at the latter. However, Hu Fei smiled faintly. What? You want to compete? How about this? How about you and I make a bet? Hu Fei looked at Ling Yan. There was a trace of a scheming smile on his face. However, in Ling Yan's eyes, this smile was mocking her. Thinking of this, Ling Yan clenched her teeth in anger. What bet? Do you think I'm afraid of you? After being provoked like this, Ling Yan's temper immediately flared up. Since you and I are class teachers, then let's see who can get first place in our respective classes. Hu Fei waved his hand, seeming to be very casual. Not to mention that the strength of the second years was stronger than the first years. Just the number of people was unfair. The second years had a total of 4 people, while the first years only had 2 people. How could they be their opponents? With such a big chance of losing, as long as it was the winner, they would be able to see it. Of course, I won't rely on the advantage of numbers. If your class can reach half of the total number of our classes, then it'll be considered your win. Hearing this, it seemed to be very fair. But in reality, it was still unfair. Sometimes, 1 + 1 didn't equal 2. There were some places that one person couldn't pass through. There were some meta beasts that one person couldn't defeat. However, when there were 2 or even 3 people, then there was a chance. Therefore, the nature of the situation was completely different. However, Ling Yan also said very heroically when he heard this. Alright, let's do it this way. Who's afraid of who's a grandson? Then tell me what's the bet. Hearing Ling Yan's words, Hu Fei also knew that his plan had succeeded. A little guy like you still dared to play so many tricks with me. If we lose, the other class will take on the basic tasks for a month. How about it? Okay. Chapter 360. The basic tasks here were assigned to every class. It was also a way to supervise the students' alchemy. In addition, there were many social responsibilities, such as cleaning the library. After all, the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor was a dynasty-level institution. If the students who went out were very rude and had no sense of responsibility, it would have a great impact on the reputation of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Therefore, no matter how talented a student was, they had to spend time doing these trivial things. However, there was only one exception, and that was the students who had passed the Genius Tower. Those who could solve the difficult problems of the Genius Tower were the elites of the elites. They were included in the ranks of the important training of this institution. After all, the difficult problems of the Genius Tower needed to be solved continuously. Obviously, these second-year students of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor didn't have such ability, so they had to have some basic tasks. This wasn't a big punishment, nor was it a serious consequence. Everyone could afford to lose, but this was a matter of face. How could Ling Yen lose all his face in front of that dog shit? Therefore, he had to trample on the other party. Hu Fei was pleased with himself. Li Zongjio had returned so early. It was obvious that he couldn't stand the temperature of the White Blaze Mountain, so he fled back. It was just a little loss of face. It wasn't a big deal. Ling Yen wanted to ask Li Zongjio how his collection was going, but when he turned around he found that Li Zongjio was long gone. He didn't listen to their bet at all. Instead, he walked to a quiet place alone and entered a state of cultivation. Li Zongjio wanted to be ready as soon as possible, because he would soon embark on the path of saint cultivation. It would open the door to another world. Having seen what the peak was, Li Zongjio would have a higher goal. In fact, this kind of peak wasn't really the peak. There were more profound and mysterious existences. Hellprajna technique. Together with the Black Bat Sword. Li Zongjio had to study it carefully. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any chance to break through. He would still be walking the same old path. This damned guy, is he a cultivation maniac? Ling Yen saw Li Zongjio, who was in a state of cultivation. It was a little strange. Even when they were on the sky-shaking ship, they saw Li Zongjio cultivating. Now that he was cultivating here, would he die if he didn't cultivate? Ling Yen, who originally wanted to ask about it, also dispelled such a thought. When the time was up, he would bring all of them back to the academy and then judge them in the academy. Do the statistics. That was because the academy had equipment that specialized in inspecting these medicinal herbs and scoring them. It was absolutely fair and there wouldn't be any other problems. This kid might not be reliable. Ling Yen thought. But fortunately, that Kuan Erasure from Kuan Castle shouldn't disappoint me. This kid has a huge responsibility in this, hee. Just when Ling Yen placed all his hopes on Kuan Erasure, he suddenly heard a voice from behind him. Hello, teacher. Kuan Erasure said very politely and his voice wasn't soft. After Ling Yen heard it, he was stunned. He turned around and saw Kuan Erasure appear in front of him. His eyes were like copper bells as he stared at Kuan Erasure in front of him. Why did you come back? There's still half a day's time. Who asked you to come back? Half a day isn't time. Ling Yen couldn't wait to strangle Kuan Erasure to death. I've collected almost all of them. It shouldn't be a problem to get first place. Kuan Erasure was a little confused. Why was Ling Yen so angry and looked like he was going to eat someone? However, his performance was not bad. You and that damned Li Zongjio, you two are going to piss me off. After Ling Yen finished speaking, he directly turned around and left. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with these people. Wait for death, just wait for losing. 2. Li Zongjio also came back. So fast? Kuan Erasure scratched his head. He understood the meaning of these words. This time, he was able to come back so fast because he had other gains. In addition, there weren't any good herbs on this Baiji mountain. He had already gone to the dangerous places. If he wanted to go to other places, he wouldn't even have enough time to go back and forth. Therefore, Kuan Erasure also came back directly. However, what Kuan Erasure didn't expect was that Li Zongjio also came back so fast. Why don't we forget about the bet just now and do it again next time when it's fair? When Hu Fei saw this scene, he immediately laughed. Now that these two students came back directly, there was definitely no chance to win. With just these two guys, it was impossible for them to get first place. Otherwise, the people from other classes would easily surpass them. Facing this almost non-challenging bet, Hu Fei also thought that he was taking too much advantage. Otherwise, it would be better to just forget about it. However, Ling Yen wouldn't back down so easily. He immediately said no. Don't be happy too early. The situation is not certain yet. Teacher, get out of here. Ling Yen couldn't wait to kick Kuan Erasure away. This shameful thing. Kuan Erasure wanted to say something but stopped. However, he saw that Ling Yan didn't seem to be very happy, so he directly walked away. Seeing that Li Zongjio was cultivating, he didn't go forward to disturb him. However, Kun Erasure, who wanted to take a rest, also chose to continue cultivating. After all, Li Zongjio, who was ranked first in the freshman list, was cultivating day and night. How could he be lazy? It wouldn't be easy to surpass Li Zongjio. It's been a long time since I met such a strong opponent. Compared to other geniuses, Kun Erasure wasn't afraid of these people. After all, these people's talents, in Kun Arashi's opinion, were not unsurpassable. However, in front of Li Zongjio, Kun Erasure had a feeling of looking up at a high mountain. No matter how hard he tried, it would be difficult to surpass Li Zongjio. However, the harder it was to reach the peak, the more Kun Erasure was interested. I will definitely surpass you. The sky gradually brightened. Some people also gradually returned to the camp. When Shueyu came back, she saw that Li Zongjio had been waiting in the camp for a long time. She immediately became angry. In these 3 days, it could be said that she specially came to find Li Zongjio. However, except for a glance at the beginning, she didn't know where Li Zongjio was hiding. She didn't expect that he would escape first. When Murong Jian and the others came back and saw that Li Zongjio was safe and sound, they were even more furious. They didn't even know when Li Zongjio came back. Didn't I tell you to keep an eye on him? Murong Jian angrily reprimanded the people behind him. The people behind him also lowered their heads in shame. However, there was no other way. The incandescent mountain was so big. If you wanted to seal it, it would be sealed. They only had so many people. It was already very good that they could hold on until now. Murong Jian originally wanted to cripple Li Zongjio on the mountain and teach him a good lesson. However, in these 3 days, they didn't even see Li Zongjio's hair. This made Murong Jian's stomach full of anger, but he didn't have a place to vent it. This time he's lucky. Murong Jian deeply remembered Li Zongjio's disdain and provocation towards him that day. Many teachers gathered together and counted the number of people. When they saw that their students were able to return safely, they were very satisfied and kept nodding their heads. If they couldn't even pass through the incandescent mountain, then there was no need for them to live. If they didn't have the qualifications to become a student of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor, then they would be directly eliminated. When most of the people had arrived, the 4 heavenly kings of the Heavenly STEM A department that received a lot of attention still hadn't appeared. The 4 heavenly kings were considered the 4 most outstanding in the previous batch. The fact that the 4 of them could enter the Heavenly STEM A department at the same time was enough to prove their talent and strength. However, they still hadn't appeared, which made people curious. Not to mention that Qin Huatian is the #1 expert of the Heavenly STEM A department. Zhao Qingfeng and the others are also quite strong. In the second year, they can definitely be ranked in the top 10. Even if you include those crouching tigers and hidden dragons, it's still not bad. However, they still haven't appeared. What's going on? Could it be that these people want to forcefully take first place? It's really possible. If the 4 of them joined hands, then who knows how terrifying it would be. We have to pay attention to them. Those who paid more attention to these people were the second years. Even Gong Jio himself found it strange. However, when he saw that Li Zongjio had returned safely, he relaxed. Qin Huatian is back. In the distance, a figure was slowly approaching. It wasn't time yet. Hu Fei smiled when he saw Qin Huatian's return. Among the 4 students, Qin Huatian's talent was undoubtedly the strongest. So much so that his current achievements were also the highest. Therefore, when he saw Qin Huatian, he was naturally in a good mood. In Hu Fei's view, Qin Huatian alone was enough to defeat Li Zongjio and the others. Teacher, that's Class A's first-year Kun Erasure. Get the hell out here. Qin Huatian first bowed towards Hu Fei, then roared towards the camp. Chapter 361. They didn't understand why Qin Huatian was looking for Kun Erasure as if he was looking for his father's murderer. Could it be that something unknown had happened on Baiji Mountain? Wasn't this Kun Arashi's taste a little too heavy? Looking at Qin Huatian's angry face, everyone felt that something was wrong. The crowd automatically separated and everyone stood to the side. And at the end of the crowd was Kuan Erasure. At this moment, Kuan Erasure was eating a popsicle with a dumbfounded expression on his face. Li Zongjio, who was beside Kuan Erasure, also walked to the side indifferently. It was as if he was just watching a show and wasn't very familiar with Kuan Erasure. What's wrong? Hu Fei subconsciously furrowed his brows. With Qin Huatian's strength and status, there was no reason for him to lose his composure in front of so many people. Could it be that Qin Huatian had really done something terrible to him? This person schemed in Balian Mountain, attacked me, and stole all my medicinal ingredients. Qin Huatian pointed at Kuan Erasure and said with gritted teeth, "It was simply a disgrace. As a second year, he was actually bullied by a first year. If this spread out, wouldn't he become a joke?" But it was true. Kuan Erasure had set a trap in advance and waited for him to rush in. Then, he took the opportunity to steal all his medicinal ingredients. Not only that, he even beat him up. Although this matter was very embarrassing, if he didn't say it out loud, he would lose even more face. Now, he thought that he still had a chance to get the medicinal ingredients back and make Kuan Erasure pay the price. Not only did Qin Huatian steal all his medicinal ingredients, he even tied him to a tree and sealed his yuan qi. He only recovered just now. If it had been a little later, he would have probably died from the heat. Therefore, after escaping, he immediately rushed towards Kuan Erasure. He wanted to beat up Kuan Erasure until half of his body was paralyzed. Of course, Qin Huatian didn't mention that he was tied to a tree. If others found out, it wouldn't be as simple as losing face. They would probably never be able to raise their heads again. It was that serious. What a madman. He actually dares to use underhanded methods against his fellow disciples. Hu Fei instantly realized that something was wrong. Since the other party had snatched the medicinal herbs, they had to act swiftly and decisively. They had to force the other party to hand over the medicinal herbs. First, they had to stand on the high ground and make that Kuan Erasure be spurned. They had to ruthlessly humiliate this Kuan Erasure and completely destroy the morale of their class. "I didn't expect you to be such a person." Li Zongjio pointed at Kuan Erasure, as if he was extremely dissatisfied with Kuan Erashi's actions. The surrounding students were also pointing at them. That's right. How shameless. If you have the guts to rob your fellow disciples, why don't you go and fight with the meta beasts? This person is too evil. I used to think that he was quite handsome, but now it seems that he's worse than a beast. A young girl hurriedly said. She even covered her face as she spoke. She felt that her eyes were blinded when she looked at Kuan Erasure. "You, hurry up and hand over the medicinal herbs. You're just a new student, yet you dare to do such a despicable thing. My Heavenly Star Medicine Manor doesn't recruit people with bad character. Hand over the medicinal herbs and get lost," Hu Fei said arrogantly. It was as if this sentence had decided Kuan Erashi's fate. He directly expelled Kuan Erasure from the academy. As for Kuan Erasure, he looked as if nothing had happened. He stood at the same spot and ate the ice stick in his hand. This place was so hot, no one knew where Kuan Erasure got the ice stick from. Teacher Hu, you're really impressive. You want to expel a student from my class with just a few words. Why don't you say a few more words and expel me as well? While everyone was criticizing Hu Fei, Ling Yan also used a strange tone and slowly walked out from the crowd. When she walked past Kuan Erasure, she even gave Kuan Erasure a thumbs up. This kid really surprised her. She gave Kuan Erasure a reassuring look. If she couldn't settle this matter, she, Ling Yan, wouldn't be able to be a class teacher. Ling Yan, you're protecting a future dynasty's cancer. He hasn't even entered the academy for 3 days, yet he has already done such a despicable thing. How can my Heavenly Star Medicine Manor let him live? When Hu Fei saw Ling Yan come out, he already had a bad premonition in his heart. How is he a dynasty's cancer? Teacher Hu, why don't you say something? If you can't say anything, then you're bullying my first year. Ling Yan coldly said. She thought that they would lose this time, but before they lost the competition, there was actually such a turn of events. Kuan Erasure snatched Qin Huatian, which simply gave her a lot of face. First year facing second year, And even won, of course. This was very satisfying. Moreover, he snatched a person, which was equivalent to 3 against 3. Perhaps there was still a chance for victory. The trial of Incandescent Mountain originally didn't have any rules. If Kuan Arashir fought with a group of 10 against 1, then I'll naturally teach him a lesson. But you also heard it just now, they were fighting 1 against 1. You're not as good as him, so you're blaming us. This trial didn't say that we can't compete with each other. Ling Yan waved her hand and said, this was indeed the case. This competition between fellow disciples was also considered a part of the trial. However, during normal times, everyone knew each other. They would at least give face and greet each other when they met. Of course, there were also those who really fought, but if they lost, they wouldn't say anything. However, it was different this time. A mere first year had actually beaten a second year to the ground. Moreover, this Qin Huatian was publicly recognized as the strongest among the second years. His combat strength was at least in the top 3. How could such strength come out of nowhere? However, Qin Huan was snatched away by someone else. This couldn't be justified. Even Qin Huatian himself couldn't pass the test in his heart. Therefore, when he rushed down the mountain, he wanted to find Kuan Arashir and fight with his life. He must teach Kuan Arashir a lesson. He always believed that the reason why he fell in the hands of Kuan Arashir was because of his carelessness. Otherwise, he would have been able to eliminate Kuan Arashir in front of him in minutes. This is clearly twisting words and forcing logic. Does not have a rule, so it is allowed? Could it be that there is no rule that states that we can't kill each other, so it is allowed to kill each other? Hu Fei's mouth was also very powerful. He even directly twisted this point. Hearing these words, Ling Yan was so angry that he was about to attack. Who was twisting words and forcing logic? It was obviously this Hu Fei. However, Ling Yan didn't have time to make a move. There was another commotion behind him. That brat is there. Go. Li Zongjiu, get out here for me. Get out of the way, Li Zongjiu, get out here for me. Li Zongjiu? When Ling Yan and the others heard the roar, they subconsciously looked at Li Zongjiu. Some of them were extremely curious. Li Zongjiu was a famous figure. He was ranked first in the freshman list and even attracted the Heavenly Pool spiritual Jiao. Just these 2 points alone were enough to attract the attention of many people. What did this brat do again? Ling Yan couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He saw Zhao Qingfeng and the other 2 walking in from outside. When Zhao Qingfeng saw Hu Fei and the others, he suppressed his anger and bowed. Teacher, no matter what, you have to make a decision for us today. That Li Zongjiu stole our storage rings. Stole their storage rings. When Kuan Arashir heard these words, he immediately looked at Li Zongjiu in shock. He couldn't help but give Li Zongjiu a thumbs up. This was too fierce. He only dared to snatch some herbs and return the rest to Qin Huan. However, Li Zongjiu was awesome. He directly took away the storage ring of the other party. Most of the time, these storage rings contained all of their belongings. What? Even Ling Yan's eyes widened. These 2 brats, one more ruthless than the other, one more capable of causing trouble than the other. They directly snatched the storage rings. This was too ruthless. He stole your storage rings? Hu Fei looked at Zhao Qingfeng. There were still injuries on his face that hadn't completely healed. He stole 3 of my storage rings. Not 1 but 3. The entire audience was in an uproar. Whether it was the second years or the first years, they all had a whole new level of respect for this person called Li Zongjiu. This heavenly STEM department's A class. This year's first years were already fierce to such an extent. You actually stole 3 of them. Kuan Arashir looked at Li Zongjiu. Not only Kuan Arashir, even Ling Yan's eyes were about to pop out. However, when he turned around, his face was filled with uncontrollable ecstasy. Just Li Zongjiu alone was able to steal 3 of their people. This was too cool. Just now, Ling Yan was still worried about whether or not he would lose. However, in the blink of an eye, he already knew that he would definitely win this bet. The other party wouldn't even have the chance to turn things around. The students were discussing animatedly. In the crowd, there was a pair of big black eyes. At the beginning, they didn't dare to believe it. Then they were shocked. Then they clenched their teeth. Emotions constantly changed in their eyes. However, in the end, they were deeply shocked. So he's Li Zongjio. No wonder. Shueiyue looked at Li Zongjio's figure and suddenly understood. Chapter 362. When Zhao Qingfeng said that, Hu Fei thought that he didn't hear it clearly. What did you say? Hu Fei couldn't help but ask again. Zhao Qingfeng also understood that with so many people present, if he directly said that the three of them were beaten up by Li Zongjio, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? But if he said that the three of them were beaten up by a woman, wouldn't that be even more embarrassing? Therefore, it was better to directly blame Li Zongjio. Moreover, they had 3 mouths, and that Li Zongjio only had 1 mouth, which was nothing at all. As long as they insisted that Li Zongjio couldn't do anything to them. This Li Zongjio is despicable and shameless. He set up a trap in a cave and made the 3 of us fall for it. While we were unconscious, he took away our storage rings. He is no different from those despicable robbers. Zhao Qingfeng pointed at Li Zongjio and roared. He said that he was a weak person who was bullied, and even fell for Li Zongjio's trick, which was why road ended up like this. But in the eyes of the crowd, "Teacher, you have to make a decision for us," Zhao Qingfeng said to Hu Fei. When such a thing happened, Hu Fei was also confused. There were 3 of them, and Li Zongjio was only 1 person. No matter how he looked at it, this didn't seem right. Could it be that this Li Zongjio was actually this powerful? Moreover, because of the issue of whether or not they could snatch it, they had already argued with Ling Yan before, and they didn't get any good results. Therefore, even if Zhao Qingfeng asked, it would be difficult for Hu Fei to get the things back. Ling Yan, you heard it too. Ask Li Zongjio to hand over the things. If it was according to what you said, then it would be fine to just snatch some medicinal herbs, but now that Li Zongjio directly took away their storage rings, this is clearly the act of a robber. If this is reported to the imperial court, he will go to jail. Hu Fei directly mentioned the imperial court. Indeed, robbery was a relatively serious crime. As long as it was a crime, it would be very serious. Especially at the foot of the imperial city, it would not be tolerated. Ling Yan also frowned. Snatching the storage ring was indeed a wrong move. Immediately, Ling Yan arrived in front of Li Zongjio. You stole their storage rings? Ling Yan asked. Li Zongjio blinked. He denied it flatly. He refused to admit it at all. Upon hearing Li Zongjio's straightforward denial, Kun Erishur felt like prostrating himself in admiration of Li Zongjio's acting skills. It was too ferocious. He was too shameless. Anyone could see that the anger on those people's faces was not real. After all, who would joke about such a thing? But as long as Li Zongjio denied it, and the other party could not produce any evidence, what could they do? This time, it was Ling Yan's turn to be blindsided. He never thought that Li Zongjio would be so daring. He was clearly trying to deny it. If Li Zongjio continued to deny it, then they could not do anything to him. You're shameless. A real man dares to admit his actions. You actually have the face to deny it. I've never seen such a shameless person. At this moment, Qin Huatian had already retreated to the side. Looking at the situation, he would not be able to get back his medicinal herbs. If he could not get it back, then so be it. In comparison, he could be considered lucky. After all, his storage ring was still there. That Kun Erishur was a bit righteous. Zhao Qingfeng and the others were miserable. They met a merciless Li Zongjio. They could only swallow this loss. I never thought that this Li Zongjio's conduct would be so improper. Mo Suli said faintly. It's hard to say, but his strength is indeed very strong. To be able to take advantage of the 3 of them, he's definitely not an ordinary person. Mu Qingyun said in a deep voice. Originally, Mu Qingyun did not put Li Zongjio in his eyes. Or rather, he did not treat him as an enemy. He was just a new freshman's top disciple. It could not prove anything. Every year, there would be a new top disciple. Could it be that he would treat them all as enemies? But in this matter, from the way Li Zongjio handled it, it was clear that he had full confidence. Otherwise, Li Zongjio would be a fool. So what if he's strong? Improper conduct is still disdainful. Mo Suli seemed to be unhappy with Li Zongjio. Mu Qingyun glanced at Mo Suli. Who was the one with improper conduct? This was still uncertain. Was snatching the storage ring considered bad behavior? Wasn't that a little too arbitrary? Before knowing the truth, it was best not to make any wild guesses. Li Zongjio, you're a freshman. Perhaps you don't know the rules of our Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Our Heavenly Star Medicine Manor is the #1 institution in the Xingyan dynasty. Other than cultivating the art of alchemy, we also pay great attention to the conduct of our students. Hu Fei walked towards Li Zongjio. Moreover, as he walked, the aura on his body continued to rise. It was as if there was a force gathering and was about to land on Li Zongjio's body. It gave Li Zongjio a great pressure. Today, if you hand over the item and admit your mistake and repent, I can forgive you. But if the evidence is irrefutable and you can't deny it, then no matter how high your cultivation talent is, I will kick you out of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor. Hu Fei said in a loud voice. At the last moment, Hu Fei's aura had reached its peak. He was only 5 steps away from Li Zongjio. However, at this distance, Hu Fei seemed to have become a 7 feet tall giant. One had to raise their head to see Hu Fei's aura. Kick me out of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor? On what basis? Li Zongjio didn't care about the matter of snatching the item. However, when he heard that the young man in front of him dared to pressure him and even used his mental strength to increase his aura and pressure Li Zongjio, it was a provocation. On what basis? On the basis that I'm a 5th grade alchemist. Being provoked by a student, with Hu Fei's temper, how could he let you get away unscathed? When Hu Fei's aura erupted, he had already decided to kick Li Zongjio out of the school. Hu Fei, what do you mean? Seeing Hu Fei using his power to bully others, Ling Yan naturally wouldn't agree. Moreover, this was their own problem. If they wanted to fight, then she, Ling Yan, wasn't afraid at all. You're a 5th grade alchemist. Could it be that you're the only 5th grade alchemist in the entire school? Ling Yan's aura also erupted. However, the confrontation between the two had yet to begin. Then he heard Li Zongjio's unhurried words. Oh, a 5th grade alchemist is very powerful? He actually dared to mock a 5th grade alchemist. Li Zongjio's actions completely shocked everyone present. This was a living example of knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain, but still going to the tiger's mountain. Could it be that Li Zongjio's family owned a yuan stone mine? He dared to speak to a teacher of the school like this and didn't even put the other party's threat in his eyes. Kuan Arashi's eyes widened. He originally thought that Li Zongjio was only a little stronger than him. As long as he worked hard, he would be able to catch up with him. However, after hearing Li Zongjio's words, Kuan Arasher knew that the gap between him and Li Zongjio wasn't just a little or two. They weren't even on the same level. Li Zongjio, don't speak first. Ling Yan frowned. Respecting one's teacher was a basic principle. If Li Zongjio directly contradicted Hu Fei, it would definitely be against the rules. It would also leave a topic for gossip. Perhaps when he returned, he would be given a big demerit. At that time, wouldn't it affect Li Zongjio's future? Little did they know that Li Zongjio didn't care about the future at all. It was all empty. Whoever jumped in front of him, he would break their legs. What royal power and wealth! Li Zongjio didn't care at all. If you gave him face, even if you were a student, Li Zongjio would respect you and give you face. However, if you thought that with a little status and strength, you could step on Li Zongjio, then just wait to be killed by Li Zongjio. Even if you were a dean or a master, Li Zongjio would kill you in minutes. Therefore, if this Hu Fei liked to show off his ability, Li Zongjio didn't care. However, if you ran in front of Li Zongjio and ran amok, then Li Zongjio wouldn't be polite. Ling Yan also didn't expect Li Zongjio's temper to be so fierce. He wanted to calm down for the time being. There were so many people here. It wouldn't be good to have a public conflict. Instructor Ling Yan, you don't have to protect this person. Li Zongjio, since you want to know the power of a 5th grade alchemist, fine. I'll have a battle with you. The loser will get out of Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Do you dare? Hu Fei had already made up his mind to start with Li Zongjio. He wasn't a good person. Since he dared to provoke him, then he should be prepared to be beaten up and killed. Li Zongjio, you're not allowed to accept the battle, Ling Yan said and then looked at Hu Fei. Hu Fei, if you want to have a battle, I'll fight with you. Before the situation continued to change, Li Zongjio's voice sounded again. But this time, everyone present could feel how difficult and terrifying Li Zongjio was. It was impossible to make an enemy out of such a person. Get out of Heavenly Star Medicine Manor? Hee, whoever loses will die. Chapter 363. This Li Zongjio is crazy. Is this guy stupid? He actually dared to compete with instructor Hu Fei. He is seeking his own death. This Li Zongjio is dead. Idiot. Everyone looked at Li Zongjio with a face full of sympathy. Such a good future was about to be destroyed because of impulsiveness. Impulsiveness was the devil. Boss, calm down. Kuan Erisher patted Li Zongjio's shoulder. This kind of bet was too serious. It was just a small matter, but now it turned out like this. It was really not worth it. Almost everyone was not optimistic about Li Zongjio. Obviously, this Li Zongjio's only end was death. Originally, he only wanted to leave Heavenly Star Medicine Mansion, but now he dared to directly gamble with his life. Could it be that Li Zongjio really did not rob? So now he wants to use his death to prove his innocence. Even Ling Yan almost believed that Li Zongjio was innocent. But in Ling Yan's view, this Li Zongjio was too ambitious. Fine. Since you want to die, then I will agree to your request. Hu Fei was so angry that he laughed. A mere freshman actually dared to shout at him, and actually dared to offend him like this. Looking down on a 5th grade alchemist? Then I will let you know what an alchemist is. It was simply ridiculous. As for Li Zongjio winning, he never thought about this kind of thing. If Li Zongjio really won, then there was no need for him to live in this world. Hu Fei, that's enough. Ling Yan reacted and immediately said to Hu Fei. Li Zongjio was impulsive. Could it be that Hu Fei was also immature? We are all adults, we have to be responsible for our own words. If I lose, I will not say anything and kill myself on the spot. I will not blame anyone. Hu Fei stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently. However, was it possible for him to lose? The eyes of Zhao Qingfeng and the rest were also filled with excitement. In comparison, it didn't matter whether he had the storage ring or not. Anyway, Li Zongjio was going to die. They were delighted. Not only did they want Li Zong to die, but they also wanted that woman to die. After waking up in the cave, the three of them thought about it for a while. They discovered that the girl wasn't a student of their Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. The moves she used were very similar to those of the army. She should be a member of the Vermilion Bird Army. However, she was a woman after all, so they pretended not to know about it. After that, he would find an opportunity to take revenge himself. However, when Zhao Qingfeng recalled that Li Zongjio had stepped on his face, he absolutely could not let this Li Zongjio go. He had to kill him. Now, the opportunity had finally arrived. Such a good ending was what they wanted to see. Ahem, both of you should be quiet. Don't tell me you want to fight in front of the students? Just as Ling Yan was about to attack, the leader of this group, Director Shang Diqing, also walked out. Originally, I don't have the authority to interfere in the matters of your Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. However, this alchemy battle challenge happened during the course of the event that I led. More or less, I have some responsibility. Shang Diqing slowly said as he looked at Li Zongjio. The alchemy battle between the two of you doesn't violate the rules of the academy. However, the stakes are a bit too much. How about this, change the stakes? Li Zongjio, if you lose, you will automatically leave the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Hu Fei, if you lose, you will be stripped of your identity as a teacher. At the same time, you will never be able to take a step into the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. How about it? It sounded fair, and didn't seem like an impulsive decision. Both sides had suffered losses. Moreover, the one who suffered more was Hu Fei. Not only was his identity stripped, but he also had to leave the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor. Such a punishment was extremely severe for the academy. Director Shang is fair. Hu Fei clasped his hands. Shang Diqing's seniority was higher than his. Since Shang Diqing stood out to speak, he naturally had to listen. Otherwise, he would be disrespecting his teacher. What about you? All right, I will take his life myself. Li Zongjio nodded. You can say whatever you want, but I'm definitely going to take your life. Shang Diqing frowned. It was obvious that Li Zongjio had the intention to kill Hu Fei. However, in Shang Diqing's opinion, it wouldn't be easy for Li Zongjio to win. Therefore, this matter wasn't valid. How about we set the time of your battle to be 1 month later? Shang Diqing said. I will listen to Director Shang's arrangement. Let him enjoy it for 1 more month. Hu Fei sneered. Li Zongjio humiliated him in public. If he, Hu Fei, allowed Li Zongjio to leave Monarch City safely, wouldn't he lose face? Therefore, even if he lost, he, Hu Fei, would personally end Li Zongjio's life. Of course, he wouldn't do it in front of everyone. He would make Li Zongjio disappear without a trace. Hu Fei had mastered such a skill quite well. No, 1 month is too late. I don't have that much time to wait for you. Let's do it tomorrow. Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, Li Zongjio shook his head and raised a finger. Why would he wait so long to start a feud? Moreover, it wasn't as if he couldn't kill him. What a joke. Therefore, Li Zongjio directly said that they would have an alchemy battle tomorrow. At this moment, even Hu Fei's eyes widened. It was as if in Li Zongjio's eyes he, Hu Fei, was just a fly that could be swatted to death. But how dare he be so arrogant? Ling Yan thought that Li Zongjio didn't want to live anymore. However, Ling Yan realized that Li Zongjio didn't seem to be impatient at all. It was as if Li Zongjio didn't care about all of this. Such a challenge was nothing in front of Li Zongjio. You actually dare to accept Hu Fei's challenge. Kid, you have guts. When Murong Jian saw Li Zongjio being so unruly, he couldn't help but admire Li Zongjio. Facing such an expert, Li Zongjio had already far surpassed Murong Jian in terms of level. Even if it was Murong Jian, in front of Hu Fei, he could only behave properly. Although it was only a grade higher, the difference between them was like the difference between the clouds and the earth. With Murong Jian's current strength, it would take him at least 5 to 10 years to reach Hu Fei's level. This was still considered fast. How many people were stuck at the threshold of the 5th grade alchemist? It was almost uncountable. Back then, Li Zongjio directly challenged Li Zongjio. It could even be said that Li Zongjio ignored him. In comparison, this Li Zongjio must have held back some of his strength. However, it was still hard for Murong Jian to believe that Li Zongjio could compete with a grade 5 alchemist like Hu Fei. Although it's stupid, he's still a man. No one knew how this matter would end. Perhaps the academy would step in to stop it. After all, this wasn't a small matter. A newly enrolled student actually challenged an instructor of the academy. Most importantly, the instructor was the one who initiated the challenge. This was even more puzzling. How much hatred was there between the two of them? Very good. When I return, I will report this to the academy. It has been a long time since someone like you, who doesn't respect his teacher, appeared. Since you are so confident in your strength, then I will show you the difference between us. After Hu Fei finished speaking, he left with Zhao Qingfeng and the others. The Sky Shaker ship had already arrived, so he took the lead and boarded it. Shang Diqing and Ling Yan looked at each other. The matter of the Heavenly Gone Court was not something that the Earth Branch Court could interfere with. Even if Shang Diqing interfered, there wouldn't be any results. After all, Hu Fei was also a genius. In the academy, his future position would definitely be higher than Shang Diqing's. He had such potential at such a young age. In addition, Hu Fei's background was not simple. Therefore, no one was willing to offend Hu Fei for Li Zongjio. Only Ling Yan stood on Li Zongjio's side. However, Li Zongjio's temper was too stubborn. Therefore, even if Ling Yan spoke, it would be useless. After all, Li Zongjio did not cooperate. Where did your confidence come from? What level is your alchemy level? Ling Yan looked at Li Zongjio's indifferent expression. Hu Fei is a 5th grade alchemist. His success rate is 17%. This is the result of the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. It's not that easy to win. Even if it's me, I might not be able to win against him. You are too impulsive. How about this? I will go back and talk to the dean and let him do some work. This time we have lost. You are still young and have a chance. 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. 10 years later, you can find him for revenge. Ling Yan said. Right now, he was trying his best to think of a way to save Li Zhongjiu's life. Although the two of them had not known each other for a long time and were not very familiar with each other, Ling Yan regarded Kuan Erisher and Li Zhongjiu as his own people. Therefore, no matter what happened, he would not give up on the two of them. You can rest assured that he is not my opponent. However, I need a few herbs. Do you have the Great Desolate Grass here? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.